We'll do it live. Fuck it. Do it live. I'll write it and we'll do it live. And thing sucks.
In 5, 4, 3.
Citizens of the internets, we're back at you. Let me scoot over a little bit. Oh, I'm like kind of off the camera here. Hopefully my mic is working and everything is good today. I kind of threw this show together last minute, so I'm kind of going without a net here. I usually kind of create like a set list and build some, just so I have something to go by. But today I just have a folder full of shit, and we're going to talk about all of it. So one of the first things I want to show you, just real quick, that I'm so proud of is this parody video I did, which I will probably be playing throughout this broadcast, but check this out real quick. This is your own Antony Blinken with his hit single, Keep on Bombing Lots of People.
Today's markup initiates contempt of Congress proceedings against.
Yeah, so that is your boy Tony Blinken with his
Darling for defying a subpoena.
Keep on bombing lots of people. So we're going to start things off tonight with a today. I don't even know what time of day it is. I posted this up before I went to bed last night and literally rolled out of bed this morning to do this stream. So you're welcome. The first thing I wanted to talk about today, you may have seen this spat between Marjorie Taylor Greene and AOC. And if you didn't, where have you been? It was so cute. They called each other names in Congress. And the way it started, I thought was interesting. And no one paid attention to this, of course, because our politics is based on decorum and not any like real debate of any kind, right? But the thing that triggered this whole incident, if you watch the footage, and we're going to go through it meticulously, but the Republicans were there to basically, the whole point of this hearing was to bring Merrick Garland in for basically, and you've probably heard all this, but I'm going to recap it real quick. They did a report, there was the whole classified documents thing. Trump had classified documents, Biden had classified documents. They found out, they went in with Biden and they did this interview, and basically the guy said, prosecutor whatever his name was, said that Biden was like an elderly old man and he couldn't be held accountable, was the crux of it. So they're doing the same thing to Trump though. And what these guys were kind of impeaching Merrick Garland for is they're a congressional oversight committee. And with the report on Biden and the classified documents, the president or the White House basically gave Congress a written transcript of the report. What Congress is asking for, or what this congressional oversight, and it's political to some degree, of course, but I mean, to a lot of degrees, but what they're asking for is tapes, that the transcripts were taken from. And the White House is asserting executive privileges so as not to give these tapes up, which is suspicious because that, obviously means there's something on the tapes that's not in the transcripts. So anyway, let's watch some of this and just bask in the glory of our Congress.
From the Oversight Committee. The committee's February subpoena required the Department of Justice to produce audio recordings of President Biden's interview with the special counsel investigating his mishandling and improper disclosure of classified materials.
So what I'm going to do is give you the context around this Marjorie Taylor AOC thing and show you why it's a sideshow. And this guy's explaining what I just explained to you.
The department has chosen not to produce them. That's why we're here today. This is not a complicated subject. The Oversight Committee requires these audio recordings, and the Department of Justice has refused to provide them. We're not in court. The accommodations process has been exhausted. We're not making a request. The subpoena requires production.
Yeah,
We're
we
not
here now.
requiring anything that
Stupid.
interferes with an ongoing investigation. The special counsel already concluded his investigation by choosing not to charge President Biden because he is an, quote, elderly man with a poor memory, end quote. This morning, the Department of Justice informed the committee that the president has asserted executive privilege over the audio recordings of the president's interview with special counsel Hur. President Biden's decision to withhold the audio recording from Congress is alarming. The committee has already obtained the transcript of the interview. President Biden must have something to hide because it does not make sense that he would suppress the audio if the transcript was accurate. There is no substitute, as the many lawyers on this committee.
So I'm not going to make you watch all that, but that's the crux of the case that they have for this hearing. So it's valid. It's a valid case. It's not just like, oh, we love Trump, like, you know, like they're trying to make it out. So listen to Jamie Raskin right here from the Democrats.
Political contribution may be linked to an action taken or to be taken by a member or employee in his or her official capacity. That's just a reminder to my side. I hope that nobody is linking specific actions that you're taking on the Oversight Committee to campaign contributions or solicitations. And with that, I'll yield back to the distinguished gentleman from
Time's
Florida.
expired. Does any other member seek recognition?
Mr.
Chair
Chairman,
recognizes Ms. Green.
I'd like to know if any of the Democrats on this committee are employing Judge Merchan's daughter.
Okay, right there, stop. What she asked right there, remember that. I'd like to know if any of the Democrats on this committee are employing Judge Merchan's daughter. That is the piece of this that got completely lost in the press fracas around, you know, all the decorum bullshit. So listen to this.
Please tell me what that has to do with Merrick Garland.
Is she a porn star?
Oh, Goldman. That's right. He's advising. Okay.
He's advising who? What?
So she says Goldman, he's advising Dan Goldman, who's in Congress.
Do you know what we're here for? You know we're here about
just
AG.
I don't think you know what you're here
President.
for.
So right there, Ms. Crockett attacks her and says, I don't think you know what you're here for. Basically insinuates that she's stupid.
Well, you the one talking about.
I think your fake eyelashes are messing up.
No,
what you're
ain't
reading.
nothing.
Hold on.
Listen.
So then she goes, I think your fake eyelashes are messing up the thing. And now, because of that one comment, you're going to see this. They spend endless time, bleeding over decorum. But before we go into that, the whole point of me even doing this piece for you is to show you this. Marjorie has a fucking point. Dem clients of daughter of NY judge in Trump hush money case trial raised $93 million off the case. Now, that's just the headline. This gets way deeper in ways that you're not even going to believe. So let's go into the weeds on this for a second. Two major Democratic clients of the daughter of the judge overseeing Donald Trump's hush money trial have raised $93 million in campaign donations and used the case in their solicitation emails, raising renewed concerns that the jurist has a major conflict of interest. Trump's attorneys are considering filing another motion demanding Manhattan Supreme Court Justice Juan Merchan recuse himself from the trial set to begin April 15th, sources said. The judge's daughter, Lauren Merchan, a president of Authentic Campaigns, a Chicago-based progressive consulting firm whose top clients... Wait, did I change the fucking... Yeah, okay. Whose top clients include Representative Adam Schiff, who was the lead prosecutor in Trump's first impeachment trial, and Senate Majority PAC, a major party fundraiser. So that's the judge's daughter. That's already looking a little weird, but it gets better. It gets better. Authentic Campaigns, and thus the judge's daughter, is actively making money from this sham attack against President Trump, rendering Judge Merchan conflicted out. Trump spokesman Stephen Chung told the Post, adding that evidence bias is even clearer now than it was in August when Merchan rejected Trump's first recusal motion. Let's keep going. The judge should do the right thing and immediately recuse himself in order to show the American people that the Democrats have not destroyed the justice system completely. Him continuing to be involved in this crooked Joe Biden-directed witch hunt is a complete violation of applicable rules, regulations, and ethics. So Marjorie Taylor Greene pointing out that there's a guy on that committee who's tied to this judge is just kind of calling out like, hey, this is kind of rigged in general against Trump. And it is. It so clearly is. But what they did with this is turn it into this spat over the eyelashes instead of actually, it's a huge distraction, like homeboy pulling the fire alarm. But anyway, let's keep going because this gets better. Schiff's fundraising email began. It's a somber moment and unprecedented for a former president to be indicted, but his alleged offenses are also unprecedented. Adam Schiff, the voice of democracy. Trump will respond as he always does, playing the victim and blaming off others for having the temerity to investigate him in the first place, Schiff continued in the email request to supporters for $10 donations last spring. The Senate Majority Political Action Committee, which supports Democratic Senate campaigns, pocketed $73.6 million since it also began firing off fundraising emails following the ex-president's indictment. This right here is why I think that the Democrats actually want Trump to win, because if he does, it will just be like another fundraising bonanza. And they haven't done anything, but they won't have to do anything because they can just go, oh, the Republicans, oh. So, breaking news, Donald Trump indicted by Manhattan grand jury. This is an important moment for our democracy, but our work isn't over, the group said in an email. Fox News reported, we must continue protecting our Senate majority from GOP extremists. Please rush in $10 to help defund the Senate. So these guys are fundraising off this, but it gets even better. The super PAC has done more than 15 million. These articles always bury the lead too. Like it's always like a headline, and then there's like some little nugget in the bottom of the article. If you read it, you're like, holy shit, this is like disproves the headline. Or, it says something completely different. But anyway, the super PAC has done more than 15 million in business with Authentic. That's the judge's daughter's marketing firm. She's literally a campaign activist for Democrats, and her dad is judging the Trump case. Since 2019, including email fundraising and branding assistance, while Schiff's Senate campaign paid Authentic more than $10 million for digital advertising and other consulting services the past year, records show. So he's got her employed as a marketing person as well, like a campaign. She's literally like working for the Schiff campaign. Constitutional and criminal law attorney Alan Dershowitz said if the judge's daughter is involved in anti-Trump politics, this seems to be a basis for recusal of the father. Now, fuck Alan Dershowitz, one of the absolute worst people in the world, but a broken clock is right once a day. So, he is right about that. Anyway, under the law, close relationships can sometimes constitute a basis for recusal, he told the Post. Yes, of course. Imagine if the roles were reversed and like Trump's daughter's, one of Trump's sister's daughter was on like the board. So they would completely be on board with the recusal thing if that was the case. But let's keep going before we get back to the good part. Lauren, this is the part that blew my mind that no one is talking about. Lauren Mershon, who worked for Vice President Kamala Harris's 2020 presidential campaign as director of digital persuasion, has said her father detests politicians using Twitter, an apparent reference to Trump. I've actually had a complete conversations with my dad recently where he's kind of like, I hate that politicians use Twitter. And it's so unprofessional. And That's not how a politician should behave themselves. Yeah, they should talk through the news media so they're whatever they say can be slanted and distorted by AIPAC and all the people that run the fucking corporate media. And I explained that, like, yeah, I think there's a lot of instances where it's not used in, like, when our president tweets anything that he likes or thinks. And, like, that's not what he should be using it for. The 30. I love how they always put that in. Like, they try to make them sound dumb. And they do this with the Gaza protesters. They'll put, like, a quote. And, like, Israel, like, is committing, like, a genocide. Like, the 34-year-old Mershon offered during a podcast in June 20th. So that quote's from a podcast. Justice Mershon, 61, on Tuesday imposed a limited gag order on Trump, prohibiting him from publicly bashing witnesses such as his fixer-turned-enemy Michael Cohen, as well as prosecutors, court staff, and juries. And I don't know if you've been... I'm not following the Michael Cohen trial, but the last I heard, he got busted stealing a bunch of money from Trump, so he's obviously a reliable witness. The Democrats really got that one. But let's keep going. Trump, 77... will still be allowed to rip Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg, an elected Democrat, whose office is prosecuting the case, per the ruling. It also does not bar comments about Mershon or his family. Trump took aim Tuesday on his Truth Social platform, writing, Judge Juan Mershon, a very distinguished-looking man, is nevertheless a true and certified Trump hater, who suffers from a very serious case of Trump derangement syndrome. In other words, he hates me. That's very Trump. His daughter is a senior executive at a super liberal Democrat firm that works for Adam Shifty Schiff, the Democrat National Committee, Senate Majority PAC, and even crooked Joe Biden, added Trump. No, actually Kamala Harris, who also referenced an image of himself behind bars that was posted to the daughter's one-time personal X account. Which, you know, if you're a Democrat, you're going to have one of those pictures in your social media, I'm sure, if you're a stock and trade Democrat. A spokesperson for New York's state court system claimed Mershon deleted the account, which was once linked to Authentic about a year ago, and that she no longer controls it. Maybe the judge is such a hater because his daughter makes money working to get Trump, and when he rules against me over and over again, he's making her company and her richer and richer, Trump wrote. That's a valid argument. And if the reverse were true, the Democrats would rightly be freaking out about it. So Justice Mershon, who donated $15 to former Vice President Joe Biden's, he donated $15. Of course, I'm sure that he donated much more through other less traceable sources, and has supported other Democratic causes, did not return messages. Messages left with his daughter and her firm were also not returned. So let's get back to the important part of this. The outrage around Marjorie Taylor Greene's comments.
Order.
Mr. Chairman,
That's beneath
would
even
you
your
please
history and
regain
that's beneath
order
even
of your
you.
committee?
Order.
Please.
There's a point of order.
We have a point of order, Mr. Lynch.
So I took a lot of video on this. They literally bleat about this for, like, procedurally bitch and whine about this for like an hour. And I just want you to see some of it because I know, like, a lot of my favorite indie news shows covered it, but they kind of took the highlights. And there's a lot of stuff going on in the process of this that's hilarious.
State your point.
Mr. Chairman, I would just like to ask the parliamentarian if your conduct here in raising money in connection with this hearing is referable to the Ethics Committee within this hearing. Is a motion in order to refer your conduct and your abuse of
It's not a point of order.
I do have a point of order.
So that's also a valid question. If this guy's if Comer is fundraising off this hearing, that is a valid question. But it still doesn't change the fact that a legal judge in a case against Trump his daughter is literally a fucking fundraiser for the Democratic Party. A long time. She worked for Kamala Harris. I mean, at the very least, that guy should recuse himself. That's completely fair.
And I would like to move to take down Ms. Greene's words.
So AOC comes in for the kill, completely avoiding all of the actually relevant, contextually relevant stuff that's going on, to whine about MTG's comment about Homegirl's eyelashes after she basically called her dumb.
absolutely unacceptable. How dare you
meeting
attack
will
the
suspend.
physical
Meeting will
appearance of another
suspend.
person?
Are your
Move
feelings hurt?
her words down.
Aw.
Oh, girl, baby girl.
Oh, really?
Don't.
And that whole thing, that like fake hood shit she does, baby girl, like I'm from the hood. No, you're not. You're a fucking congressperson, pampered and influencer.
Even play. with
Baby
me.
girl,
We're gonna,
I don't
we
think
are going to
that.
move and we're going to take your words down. Thank you very much.
that motion.
So who will have to fail? Okay. All right. We're suspending.
Absolutely.
I'm not outraged by the fact that Democratic campaign staffers are part of the trial against a former president. I'm outraged that Marjorie Taylor Greene made a snide comment about my friend's eyelashes. Look at this douchebag in his basketball shoes, too. I love this guy. He's like, yeah, I'm a cool hip congressman. Look at my shoes. Yeah, I got some basketball shoes. Let's jump up a little bit here. There's a bunch of procedural nonsense here. All right, next clip.
Ms. Green has 4 minutes and 21 seconds. There's a motion.
Okay,
Ms.
so-
Green, do you wish to strike?
It was her turn to talk, and what they try to do, because she made that comment, is they try to like get her kicked out of the hearing.
Your words.
I have 4 minutes and 21 seconds to speak.
I think we have to do the motion first, and then unless there's another motion, then you'll be recognized again. But I believe there's another.
And what's funny is one of the biggest, loudest voices in the room to get her out of the room is that guy Dan Goldman, who works for the judge's daughter.
Motion coming. So, you agree to strike your words?
Yeah. I'll
Okay.
agree.
Ms. Green agrees to strike her words.
I believe she
Chair
needs to
recognizes
apologize. No, she
Perry.
needs to
Okay,
apologize.
hold on. Then after Mr. Perry's going to be recognized, then Ms. Green
I'm not
still has 4 minutes and
apologizing.
21
Well, then
seconds.
Okay,
you're
reserve
not
the right to
striking your
object.
words.
I am
Mr.
not
Chair,
apologizing.
Now let's go.
Also, they completely gloss over how this started. Jasmine Crockett goes, "Oh, I don't think you know what's going on." She was making fun of her. She's like, "Hey, you're what does this have to do with AG Garland?" Pointing out how like a bunch of the people in this hearing are tied to like tied to a judge that's literally in court trying to prosecute, the former president. If the roles were reversed, you would be losing your minds.
Come on, guys.
Why don't you debate me?
Mr. Chairman, the
pretty
minority.
self-evident.
You're not.
Yeah, you're not.
out of order.
You don't have.
I think it's pretty self-evident. I love how she says that too, as if Marjorie Taylor Greene's some dummy and she's like above her. No, it is self-evident that you are the dumb one, AOC, that you're the one who's afraid to debate someone like that on merit because you don't have any merit. You're busy crying about decorum when she asked a valid question that called a lot of people out.
Enough
You're out of order.
intelligence.
Chair recognizes Mr. Perry.
Okay, move to strike
I'd like to strike those words as well.
move to
I would
strike
like to strike
the
those
lady's
as well.
words again.
That's 2 requests to strike. That's 2 requests to strike.
Oh, they cannot take the
There's
words.
another motion to strike her words again. Please
All right.
get
Okay.
your members under
Here's
control.
the correct apology. Ms. Green, do you agree to unanimous consent to strike your words?
I repeat again for the second time. Yes, I'll strike
right.
my words,
That-
but I'm not.
See, and again, they could have just gone, okay, she struck her words, let's move on. But no. AOC makes a huge
Not apologizing.
Without objection.
Not apologizing.
Chair
Reserving the right to
recognize-
object.
No.
Chairman, I
Chair
reserve the right to
recognizes
object.
Mr.
I
Perry.
reserve the right to
Mr.
object.
Chairman, I move that Mr. Goldman's words and Ms. Ocasio-Cortez's words be stricken.
Okay.
Which words? And you have to do it contemporaneously. Object. The objection must be contemporaneous, and they haven't spoken in 10 minutes.
Nobody's spoken and said in 10 minutes.
Well, that's right. Therefore, defeating your proposal.
You all have. So that's my motion, Mr. Chairman.
We weren't able to.
Well, I object. It doesn't refer to anything that's on the floor. Ms. Ocasio-Cortez objected immediately and instantaneously, as you're supposed to do under the rules and precedents of the House of Representatives.
So the first time he could
Mr.
move to
Chairman,
strike.
point of parliamentary inquiry.
All right, we're going to suspend for a minute, but we'll talk to the parliamentary.
All right. I got a lot of these clips, but I'm going to try to skate through them as quick as I can because we don't need to watch all of them.
Is that allowed?
For decorum,
they
the
are.
media
For
will
another 10
evacuate
minutes.
the well
Mr. Chairman.
at the request of the
Mr. Chairman,
complaint of the ranking member.
Netflix followed Hunter Biden into this room. I don't remember anyone across the aisle complaining about Hunter Biden.
So
His
this
TV
is
film
actually really funny. Watch, listen to this.
Like, as clerks?
That what?
You're not respecting their identity?
Let me start this over. I forgot this is actually really good.
Mr. Chairman, just a point of order here. I believe there are members who've been interviewed by the media from their seats. Do we allow that?
They identify as clerks. Chairman, sorry.
That's Anna Paulina Luna from Florida saying that the people that are media members in the hall identify as clerks just to fuck with the Democrats.
You're not respecting their identity?
Wait, someone is being...
Okay.
Is that allowed?
For decorum, the media will evacuate the well
Mr. Chairman.
at the request of the
Mr. Chairman,
complaint of the ranking member.
Netflix followed Hunter Biden into this room. I don't remember anyone across the aisle complaining about Hunter Biden, his TV film crew when he came up here.
That's a good point. So do you withdraw that? Do you withdraw that?
Yeah, I was just...
Okay,
So
Mr.
that's
Raskin
hilarious.
withdrew.
Jamie Raskin right there, just to recap that, goes, hey, there's all these people in the media. I want a motion to get rid of them out of here. And the other lady goes, yeah, remember when Hunter Biden came in with all these Netflix people? You guys didn't have a problem with that? And then he retracted it. And then Raskin retracted his motion.
Through this one. So are we ready to proceed with Ms. Green finishing her 4 minutes and 21 seconds?
What is the ruling on
listen to
the
this.
motion to take her words down? I thought
They just keep stalling on this.
we had an agreement. Okay.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, I would just urge you to prevail upon the distinguished gentlelady from Georgia. Her words.
Well, it's very difficult for the stenographer to understand everything with everyone yelling and screaming back and forth. But we went through this with I would like to make a point. We went through this with some of the things that Mr. Swalwell said in the Hunter Biden deposition. Some of the things that he said negative about some of our staff and the members weren't picked up by the stenographer, unfortunately, because there was so much yelling.
Fair enough, Mr. Chairman, but I think we don't want to see a complete dissent of our committee. And the verbatim quote of the gentlelady was, "I think your fake eyelashes are messing up your reading." That is what she said. I think your fake eyelash, and that's obviously engaging in personalities. It's an ad hominem attack, and I would just ask every member.
After Jasmine Crockett said, I don't think you know what we're here for, and accused Marjorie Taylor Greene of being a dummy.
Member of this committee, in a fair-minded way, would you want to be talked to in that way about your personal appearance by another member of the committee? Because what we're doing is we're setting standards going forward. Simple apology, Ms. Green. All the gentlelady seeks is a simple apology, Ms. Green.
Look, here, I will say this. For committee
So again,
quorum.
she already offered to strike her words from the record. The reason that they haven't moved on yet is because the Democrats are demanding an apology.
We're not supposed to engage in personalities of members. That applies to everyone on both sides of the aisle. Mr. Boskowitz, Ms. Green, every single member across the aisle. Can we?
What did he say?
He just threw Moskowitz into it for now.
Can we, are we,
Well,
Can we proceed?
The motion belongs to the gentlelady from New York, Ms. Ocasio-Cortez.
Chairman.
okay, the clerk, back to order. The clerk will report, the stenographer.
I'm sorry? You agree it should be taken down, Mr. Dons?
Mr. Raskin, the gentlelady from Georgia already said that she would strike down her words. What else are we doing past that point? I didn't realize apologies were a matter of...
It's an agreement.
No, the suggestion was made to the minority that rather than go through the process of formally taking her words down, which means she wouldn't be able to speak for the rest of our hearing, as you know, that she could continue to speak, but she would voluntarily take her words down and offer a sincere apology.
I'm going to rule, overrule the point of order. It wasn't personalities. It was undecorous. And I would encourage, again, every member to abide by committee decorum, and let's vote. We all know what we're here for. You're either going to vote for it or
Mr.
against
Chairman.
it. And the lady from Georgia has 4 minutes and 21 seconds
Mr.
remaining.
Chairman, point of order.
I appealed the ruling of the chairman, Mr. Chairman, because the rules provide that you cannot insult another member's personal appearance or attire. And that is obviously part of engaging in personalities.
Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman.
Hold on. We have so many motions. We're sitting here trying to did by
I don't believe
Mr.
you can table
Gosar.
motion. I
All
don't believe
those
you
in
can table.
favor?
It's not eligible to
This is-
table.
this is-
It's not eligible to table.
We can table the appeal. We can table the appeal.
I don't know if we can table. Is
The
it
underlying
privilege to
motion.
strike?
We can table the appeal. There's a motion and second to table the appeal. Green for 4 minutes and 21 seconds.
Mr. Chair, point of order.
Listen to it.
Who's?
It's me.
Ms. Crockett.
I'm just curious, just to better understand your ruling. If someone on this committee then starts talking about somebody's bleach blonde, bad built butch body, that would not be engaging in.
So now she attacks back, and if I was the Republicans, I mean, they probably don't even know what she's talking about. But what she just said, bleach blonde, bad built butch body or whatever, that's an anti-gay slur. Butch is a slur for a lesbian. So if I was the Republicans, I'd be like, oh, this woman made an anti-gay slur. Like, fight fire with fire. If they're going to pretend like what Marjorie Taylor Greene said was some outrageous thing, some like terrible, disgusting personal attack, what was that? I mean, that was, you could literally make the argument that was an anti-gay slur. She said butch body, like she's a lesbian, and like there's something wrong with that. But let's keep going.
Personalities, correct?
A what now?
Chairman, I make a motion to strike those words.
I don't think that's
Hold on.
I'm
parliament.
trying to find clarification on what quality.
Chairman, motion to strike those
I had no idea
words.
what you just said.
We're not gonna do this. Look, you guys earlier literally just said
You
y'all
just
voted to do it.
Y'all did it first, so you don't
just
want to
voted to do it.
Order.
I'm trying to get clarification.
Look at calm down.
No, because this is
would
what
like to
y'all
get
do.
through proceedings.
So I'm trying to
Hey,
get
Ms.
clarification.
Crockett, you're not
You don't wanna
recognized.
play
Ms.
games.
Crockett.
I can't hear you with your
And
yelling.
You don't want
Calm
me to
down.
Be,
Can
no,
you please calm down?
Don't tell me to calm down.
Calm down.
Because y'all
Please
talk
calm
noise,
down.
and then you
You're
can't
out of
take
control.
Because if I
Look,
come,
Chairman,
if I
can
come
we
and
send
talk
outside to
shit
take a
about
break
her,
for 5
y'all
minutes?
gonna have.
So you always make the Democrats always get made fun of for bringing race and bullshit identity politics into everything, and here they are doing it again. The eyelash thing has nothing to do with race at all. I don't know how they were able to milk that, but I know hundreds of women that are not black that wear fake eyelashes. So it has nothing to do with this woman's race, but she's already kind of morphing it into a race card thing. Listen to her.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Chairman.
All right, Chair, okay.
You're
Order.
acting
Chair
like
now
that.
recognizes
Not cute.
Ms. Green for 4 minutes and 21 seconds. 4 minutes. Let Ms. Green.
And if there's black people watching, I mean, maybe I'm wrong about that. Please tell me. I don't want to pretend like I know, because obviously I don't have the same experiences, but it just seems like a very what's the best word? Vague thing to like associate with racism. Fake eyelashes, really? Like all strippers, black, white, Asian, Puerto Rican, Persian, they all wear fake eyelashes. In fact, I would argue that fake eyelashes are probably more of like a Persian thing than a black girl thing, but hey, what do I know?
Talk, and then I'll recognize.
But I moved to strike her words for a second time based on her second set of personal remarks attacking another member.
Who? Chairman Comer.
Because you all cannot
I have an
seem
amendment at
to
the desk,
apply
and this
the rules
sideshow
of the
needs to
committee.
stop.
We have to do this every time.
Hey, I'm recognizing.
Yeah, here, listen to AOC like she sounds like an angry parent. You guys are not following the rules of decorum. We're trying to, oh my God, bring the ruckus on the Democratic Party.
I'm recognized. I'm going to
Listen,
go ahead and start talking.
Look, I know. Look, I don't know if you've noticed it. I have 2 hearing aids. I'm very deaf. I'm not understanding.
So you've seen all
We
this.
have okay, what's the motion? What's
The motion is to strike the gentlelady's words for the second set of remarks, not the first, the second
She
that
has
applied
no
to
idea.
me.
She has no idea. I think, Mr. Chairman, I'm the only one recognized right now.
We objected at the time.
So again, you can tell now after like an hour of this, if you watch this bullshit, which I did, so you don't have to, they are literally trying to stop her from talking. And when she gets her time, AOC jumps in again. Now I want to get her for the second thing she said.
Will the member state the word she wishes
Yes.
struck?
She told me, or she asserted that I was not intelligent. These are the specific words. We're like, we can have it.
Yeah, and Crockett did that to her. That's how this whole thing started. And her snapback was about the fake eyelashes.
Read by the clerk.
It was made immediately.
And it was made immediately. I am not moving now.
I don't think it was
I am not
timely.
moving
It was
now.
made immediately, both
was
by the
made
gentlelady and by me.
Mr.
Guys,
Chair,
look.
it was made immediately.
It was made
and you
immediately,
said
both by
that
the
you would
gentlelady and by
return
me.
to us.
Guys,
She said, "You don't have the intelligence to talk to me," is what she said.
the chair recognizes.
All right.
Ms.
So
Green,
before we
for
close
4 minutes.
this out, let me show you the a little bit of this last clip I have from the hearing. I think this is the. Oh, they try to get him to.
Chair
If
recognizes.
her words are stricken, she cannot speak in this hearing.
That's Dan
Talk to your
Goldman.
parliamentarian. She has to get out.
You hear him? He's the one who got
Speak.
called
The
out. at the
chair
beginning.
If her
recognizes.
words are stricken, she cannot speak in this hearing. Talk to your parliamentarian. She has to get out.
Without a motion under unanimous consent, the
So, I won't torture you with the rest of this. I just wanted you to see what was really going on around that whole bullshit facade there. Because the whole story in the press was, oh, no, you didn't. And there was actually some substance behind what she said. So, this segment is kind of about Jasmine Crockett being Biden's new puppet. And I think it's pretty clear from that she's a partisan. And let me also say she's a very attractive woman. I'm not gonna put that, but that's meaningless. So is AOC. So is Boebert. So is Luna. Like they're stock in Congress now with good looking women, which is good. There should be more women in Congress. That said, this is what Jasmine Crockett went on CNN and did after this. And just take a listen to this. Biden's new puppet.
Of Texas. Thanks so much for being here. Appreciate it. So you have since called her racist, Congresswoman Green. I want to understand your perspective of
She's a racist, of course.
this. Do you think her going after your eyelashes, that in itself is racist?
Hey, look.
I think her specifically doing it to me, yes, that was the intent. As has been stated, women wear makeup, we wear lashes, we wear all types of.
Notice how hours of time and ink have been spilled about the eyelash comment and none of the actual substance of that hearing or anything that was said before and after the eyelash comment and the bad built butch body shit.
Things to
Here you
beautify
go.
ourselves. But MAGA has historically been on social media doing the things where they're saying, oh, she's black with lashes and nails and hair, and so she's ghetto. And so to me, this was her buying into that rhetoric and trying to.
Every woman in that Congress that day has makeup and nails and maybe not eyelashes as big as hers or whatever, but I guarantee you they're wearing mascara or some form of makeup. It's not a racist trope to call out someone's fake eyelashes. I'm sorry, it's just not. And A Star Is Born right here. That's what, like, you watch this and you go, you'll see at the end of this why this woman's being elevated now. But listen,
amplify this for the MAGA crowd. And so, yeah, I absolutely think that she only did it to be racist towards me.
Because it was towards you, or because it was eyelashes? So in that sense, it's kind of like, in your view, buying into a racist trope.
It is buying into a racist trope, but the reality is that women of all colors wear lashes.
Right. No, I know.
Yeah.
That's why I was asking.
Yeah.
Is there anything you think should happen here? Do you think that Congresswoman Green
I mean, I would put her on the list of hottest girls in Congress, absolutely, for the record.
should face any sort of punishment?
I mean, she didn't face any at the time, so I don't anticipate that she'll face any in general. I mean, I think that this speaker should be inclined to try to rein her in after trying to kick him out of his position. But they just let Marjorie do whatever she wants to do. And I think this was the first time.
And again, people watch the tape. She goes, I don't think you know what we're here for. Like, you're a dummy. Why are you bringing that up?
That someone actually said, no, you won't just treat me whatever way you want to and get away with it.
So,
and that person who said that was Marjorie Taylor Greene.
Just to explain to our viewers, she said what she said, which is a personal attack on your appearance. And then the Republicans refused to take her words away.
Yeah.
Because they said it wasn't a personal attack. And then
we just watched the fucking hearing, and that is not at all what happened. They all agreed to take her words down. She just wouldn't apologize. Fuck
you said something about, you didn't mention her name, but you obviously were talking about Congresswoman Green, bleach blonde, bad built, butch body.
So I did say fuck you, Jake Tapper, but I will give him credit for calling her out on this. This is actually reasonably decent journalism. That's an anti-gay slur, though. Bad built butch body. That is an anti-gay slur. I'm sorry, liberals.
Very good.
So it's tough to say, but you've really embraced what you said. You're printing it on swag. I think we have an image of the shirt here that you're selling to help raise money to elect Democrats. How would you respond to say it's in a...
If I'm a Republican strategist, I'm already printing the fucking, look, she responded with an anti-gay slur. It's so easy.
Appropriate to respond to an attack on somebody's...
She had t-shirts. She's selling t-shirts with an anti-gay slur on them.
Physical appearance. And you hear Congresswoman AOC say, you know,
if like fight stupidity with more stupidity is my mentality. Like, if you're going to do that, if you're going to stoop to this level of stupid, irrelevant bullshit to fight political battles, oh, she's a racist. Who fought? Like, no, there's no proof that she's a racist other than you guys whining about her being a racist. Okay? Oh, Jewish space lasers, fucking these people. She's selling a fucking t-shirt with an anti-gay slur on it, which is, it's a ridiculous, I know that that's ridiculous to say that, but it's valid. You could make that point accurately, especially when you're at this intellectual level. Like, you're already like down in the fucking dumpster, in the juice at the bottom of the dumpster at this point, fighting like, you're a racist, no, you're anti-gay. So you might as well just embrace it, right? Anyway, listen to the rest of this.
shouldn't be attacking somebody's physical appearance. But then you did the same thing. You attacked her physical appearance.
So to be clear, what I asked for was
rare props to Jake Tapper for actually bringing that up.
Clarification on the ruling. if her words were taken down, that meant that she was going to have to leave the committee for the evening, which actually would have helped everybody out because the source of the chaos is always
because she was pointing out how we all have ties to the people that are in the courts prosecuting former President Trump.
Marjorie Taylor Greene, but the chairman was concerned about his votes. He was concerned about whether or not he would be able to move forward with contempt, and so therefore,
contempt of the they were the
of Merrick Garland.
For the Attorney General Garland.
Absolutely. Yeah. So therefore, I'm like, what are we doing? So what are the parameters? And I generally wanted to know.
I mean, and again, that's valid too. I'm sure that he has a reason for not expelling her, working the rules to his liking, but they did the same shit with the January 6th stuff. They did the same thing. They like wouldn't allow certain members in. They had a primetime TV fucking thing around it. And so we know that a lot of it is optics. The point is, it's like this whole debate over the semantic stupid shit is why American politics is in the dumps, because instead of like asking valid questions like, hey, it is true that Dan Goldman in that committee who's trying to get Marjorie Taylor Greene thrown out now is tied to the judge, his daughter. And that's relevant to the conversation when you have a guy, an attorney general, head of the Department of Justice, who probably appointed the judge and, is in contempt of Congress, really.
Oh, so I did not state anything to her. I specifically asked a question and I didn't even mention her name. Mm-hmm. And so it was for clarification, and that's what I asked for. And he obviously didn't hear me.
Okay, yeah, and I hear that, but
she framed it as a question. That is the ultimate media manipulation tactic. Like, if they want to frame Tucker Carlson as a Russian, they're like, is Tucker Carlson a Russian asset in the headline? We don't know. Read on to find out. No one's going to fucking read that. They're just going to go, yeah, of course he is. He works for Putin.
She went after your appearance, and then you went back at her 1,000-fold.
I did in a very lawyerly way.
But obviously she started it. I'm not disputing that. But do you regret that at all?
I don't.
You don't?
I don't. Because here's the thing. I signed up to be a member of Congress. That didn't
Should you have to apologize?
Mean that I was supposed to walk into a position where I'm going to walk in and be disrespected. It's already a hostile.
Again, this victim, cry bullying shit is so over. I'm so done with it. I don't care who's doing it. Israel. It's tired. Like, oh, I'm a victim. I'm such a victim. No, you're a fucking sitting member of Congress. You're a fucking grown adult with all these legal degrees or whatever. Quit whining.
Work environment being there, and we do have rules. The problem with MAGA is that MAGA does not respect rules, nor do they respect the law. That is exactly why they're all running up to Trump's trial, because he's in trouble, not because of some big conspiracy by the Biden administration.
Yes.
He's in trouble because he fails to respect the law. The reason that the Supreme Court right now...
Again, how could the whole hearing you were just at, Jasmine, was about the head of the Department of Justice, the Attorney General, Merrick Garland, refusing to respect the law. All they did was ask him for audio, and he won't give it to him. So they're holding in, and here you are going like, oh, Trump refuses to respect the law. And that's the thing where Democrats, and America in general has lost any kind of like moral credibility or anything. Like, not that we ever had it to begin with, but I think maybe we did at one point. But again, it's like, how do you sit and make this argument with any kind of validity when we just saw what we did? And that's the problem with politics today, is a lack of real consistency. You see it with, my body, my choice for abortion, but not for the vaccine. You see it and with, the Republicans who are for free speech unless you're saying something that's critical of Israel. There's no intellectual consistency left. Now, it is starting to pop up, as we'll see later, in parts of the right and the left, with people like Jimmy Dore, of course, and Do Dissidents, and then, of course, people on the right like Dave Smith and, even Joe Rogan to some extent, and, a lot of these people who are definitely saying things that are outside of the norm for their particular political cult. But the reason I'm showing you the last part of this is we all know that the Biden campaign I was going to say administration, but I'll say campaign because they really haven't administered shit other than, wars that their underlings have started in different countries through proxies. But they're hurting for the black vote. And I think this is one of the reasons they're spinning this the way that they are, because they can go, oh, like she's a pretty black woman, and we can like make it a race thing again and say that like the MAGA Republicans are racist and they just want to attack black people, and maybe that'll get us some of the black vote. We'll just put this lady on TV and have her cry for a little while and see if that helps at all. But listen,
now is debating whether or not Trump can commit crimes or any president can commit crimes and then be let off is because they have no respect for law. The party of law and order is gone at this point in time.
While I have you,
and we're not going to do anything to bring it back either.
Here, President Joe Biden is very focused on the black vote this weekend. In particular, he's headed to Detroit tonight to appeal to black voters. He's speaking at Morehouse this morning. Wayne County Executive Warren Evans from Detroit, from Michigan, told the Detroit News, apathy is the biggest problem. If you look at the percentage of people who vote and the apathy of African Americans about voting, that's what will turn the tide. But
you're going to love this.
You've got to get somebody to get them out and give them a reason to come out. I'm just not really seeing it. You represent a large number of African American voters and constituents in the Dallas area. Why is Biden struggling with black voters right now?
I think it's about whether or not people understand what he has done for them. It's tough to kind of connect the dots sometimes. And honestly, this administration has done so much that it's not a matter of, hey, I've got this one thing, and just kind of continually hitting that one thing. They've done so much, but I don't think that the information has been pushed out continually.
What's the weather like on your planet?
Thanks, Sam Jackson.
And so I think right now it's about making sure it's communicated as he goes to Morehouse and speaks today that $7 billion has been given to HBCUs, more than any other administration ever. People credit Trump for supporting HBCUs when in reality, Trump did not want to reauthorize the $253 million that was already signed into law. He actually wasn't going to reauthorize it. It was Dr. Adams, a black woman, a member of the Congressional Black Caucus, who is a former HBCU professor and a former HBCU student.
No, I don't even. When I saw her saying that, I'm like, she doesn't point to anything. So I had to look up what an HBCU is, and it's historically black colleges and universities. So, I guess maybe she could make the argument that Biden has funded black colleges more. I don't know if that's valid or not, but.
Who said that's not going to be good enough. So what did Trump do? He took a picture with all the HBCU presidents and made it seem as if he did something novel and great. And it wasn't. He actually was going to cut them off. And so I think.
Every accusation from these guys is a confession again, because the masters of doing that, like pretending that they did something great, but actually doing nothing, are Barack Obama and Joe Biden. I mean, there's countless examples of that. The first being the Stock Act back in the Obama administration. They did a victory lap, like, we repealed insider trading for Congress. And then they quietly gutted it during the Boston Marathon bombing thing. And there's countless examples. The student loan thing is another example where they're like, we're going to give student loan relief. And they gave very tiny amounts to a certain group of people. And it really didn't help anything. But they're going to claim that, we did that. No, you didn't do shit.
That black folk need to know that this administration has actually invested in them. When you start looking at student debt relief, it has disproportionately positively impacted black folk. We're talking about over $137 billion for over 4 million people. That means that there is at least 4 million people that now can hopefully start to get at that wealth gap and maybe buy a home because their debt to income ratio won't be so bad.
They need to get you out on the trail is what I think.
I will be heading to Detroit as soon as I can.
All right, Congresswoman.
There you go. Biden's new puppet. And that, again, is why I think that whole blow up about racism and Marjorie Taylor Greene was they went, okay, we can totally use this for fundraising. We can turn this into a racial thing and pretend that she was attacked by the evil lords of MAGA and what terrible people they are. So moving on to our next segment here. Let's keep talking about AOC because she was recently on Chris Hayes talking about some stuff, and I want to get into it with you a little bit. So let's watch this first clip here. This is her talking about
Congresswoman
the
Alexandria
Crockett thing.
Ocasio-Cortez, who sits on the House Oversight Committee and had that exchange with Marjorie Taylor Greene. I mean, in some ways,
Again, no mention of the actual hearing itself or what the hearing was about or what was said before this.
There's a fair amount of theater and performance, I think, on Capitol Hill, but also I could sense in you in that moment, like, genuine outrage at what was being done. What is your takeaway from that moment and more broadly the kind of culture of the place that seems to cultivate those sorts of antics?
Yeah, I mean, well, first and foremost, I know that a lot of folks kind of saw these clips going around that were often highlights of what had happened. But a lot of that was a result of structural changes that Republicans decided to make in real time to essentially throw out the House handbook that frankly, and the House rules for committee guidance and for committee conduct through a vote. There was actually a procedural vote in which every single Republican went down the line and decided to vote that the comments that Marjorie Taylor Greene, the disgusting comments that she made about Representative Crockett, were in fact above board and acceptable, which is rather unprecedented.
They did not do that. We just watched the fucking hearing. See, that's the other thing that blows me away about these people is the information is now out there and we can actually see what happens. And it's one of the reasons that, networks like MSNBC and CNN don't have any viewers anymore because people know what they're doing because we can see behind the curtain. We can see how you guys controlled the flow of information and told us what was important in these debates in the past. And now you don't anymore. And so then you go and watch, you watch the full context of a debate like that. And then you go watch these like post game snippets and you see how full of shit these people are.
In the House, these rules are, they were established in the 1800s, shored up in the 1800s, after the caning involving Charles Sumner in the Senate, precisely designed to de-escalate a political culture of violence when things get too hot.
See, they do it every time. She's such a boviator for like this, like, I'm such a victim. We're such victims.
And in fact, when I was a freshman coming into the House, the rules were so widely respected that there would be motions to strike a member's words, even if they just spoke in the second person and used the word.
Yeah, when I came into the House, we all just went along with everything and did what we were supposed to, and did what the lobbyists and the government wanted us to do. What's wrong with her?
Instead of the gentleman from so-and-so.
Right.
And so Marjorie Taylor Greene, her acting, like the ogre in that role is not surprising.
Honestly, that's her being called an ogre to me is a good thing. Like that's what I thought AOC was going to be. I thought she was going to be the person who pissed off the establishment. People like me are cheering for Marjorie Taylor Greene because she's pissing off people like AOC and Chris Hayes and Rachel Maddow.
What is surprising is Chairman Comer allowing that to be the conduct of, and not just him, but every single Republican, surprisingly, except for Representative Lauren Boebert, actually. And I think, the fact that
Remember when Debbie Wasserman Schultz just spent like an entire hearing calling RFK Jr. an anti-Semite? I know that he's not another member of Congress, but like the idea that this is some like sacred place where we have to follow these respected rules and all that shit is such a crock of shit.
She has been subject to so much vitriol herself, may have to do, may have something to do with the fact, I don't know, but it could have something to do with the fact that as women, we understand the vitriol that especially happens. And if you don't want to catch any, then you shouldn't give any. And I think that's what Representative Green encountered on Friday. If you don't want none, don't start none. And if you're not going to respect the rules, then it's going to come to you.
You don't want none, don't start one. Who started that? Again, it was Jasmine. She called Marjorie Taylor Greene stupid. So let's hear AOC talk about Israel now, because this is the real scoop.
Very critical of the Biden administration's policy on Israel Gaza, although quite also strenuous in your endorsement of the Biden-Harris ticket and the importance of electing, sort of balancing those two.
So there you go, right there. That question is actually pretty good.
At the top of the list of priorities, are there specific actions, specific things the Biden administration is not doing now that it should be doing that they have under their control?
I think this right here is an excellent question because there are things that are within our control when it comes,
like cutting their funding,
comes to the bombardment and the outright famine that is precipitating in Gaza, an unfolding genocide in Gaza. And there are things that are not in our control that the Netanyahu government is just barreling ahead towards. For example, I do not believe that it is constructive to invite Prime Minister Netanyahu to a joint address of Congress.
But it doesn't matter because he'll do it even if we don't invite him, like during the Obama era.
Many foreign leaders use this opportunity to lobby the entire Congress and the U.S. government for their own needs or for a certain view of their priorities. And I don't believe that that's a constructive role for us to be playing right now. I believe that we should be more thorough in enforcing a red line at Rafah. I believe that while there was one individual weapons transfer,
and that's why I'm endorsing the guy who has done none of these things,
that was blocked. I think that we could be doing more to be investigating this. I believe that the sanctions with respect to the West Bank, we want to make sure that we are fully enforcing each and every one of the laws that we already have on the books to the fullest extent possible in order to rein in the aggression, as well as I think the extraordinary incentive that the Netanyahu administration has to continue its campaign in Rafah.
And at no point does she ever mention funding. At no point, you'll notice that. And I just wanted to take a quick aside and say something here, because watching this clip this morning, as I was putting this together, got me thinking about when I used to watch MSNBC and shows like Chris Hayes and Rachel Maddow, and how it made me feel, right? Like you watch AOC here and I'm like, oh yeah, okay. She's explaining why it's okay for me to vote for Biden, even though, you know, he's doing absolutely nothing that he promised he would do. And in fact, completely ignoring everything that the actual voting base that elected him wanted. And just basically, you know, funneling money through Ukraine that's unaccounted for. And, you know, but now I see through it. It's so funny because I had this little flashback to when I used to take these kind of shows seriously. And I really feel bad for the people who still do. Because it's so clearly just, you know, party propaganda. But let's keep going. I got a couple more clips of AOC here for you. Here she is on the ICC. Now, this is really interesting.
International Criminal Court, which is related to this, obviously, you mentioned Netanyahu. There was an arrest warrant issued for him and the head of Hamas, the mastermind of the military wing of Hamas, Sinwar, who oversaw the operation on October 7th. There was bipartisan calls in the Senate to work on legislation to essentially sanction the International Criminal Court for that arrest warrant towards Netanyahu, not towards Sinwar. Anthony Blinken said that he would be.
So that's an interesting point, too. He kind of just like low key pointed out, he's like, yeah, when the indictments came out, of course, Congress voted to sanction the ICC because they indicted Netanyahu, but not the other guy, of course, because they have no political power whatsoever.
Amenable to working with a bipartisan group of senators to come up with legislation. Would you be interested in bipartisan legislation to sanction the International Criminal Court for its arrest warrant for Benjamin Netanyahu?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. I would associate myself with some of our strongest allies, as well as other members, even within the United States Congress, that assert and respect the independence of the courts, the independence of the ICC. And what I find particularly disturbing about this attack on the ICC is that there is no particular set of evidence that has been presented by any member of any party as to any sort of reason why the ICC's conclusions are wrong or corrupted, or why the process may or may not have legitimacy. And the fact that we are simply attacking a court because we do not like its conclusion without any evidence to support that case creates, I think, an opening of hypocrisy, and it could potentially be a gift to adversaries of the United States. Because what prevents Putin, what prevents individuals from other authoritarians around the world from also disregarding an international body from trying to create accountability for war crimes anywhere else in the world? We have a responsibility in this moment to advance democracy and shore up democracy, not just here at home, but in order to be an example of a functioning democracy and upholding structures of democracy globally. And attacking the ICC is the exact opposite of what we should be doing right now.
You notice I didn't interrupt that because I think that was absolutely fantastic. Every once in a while, AOC is completely right on something, and that's something that I think she's completely right on. Although I would argue that the ICC's case against Putin is complete bullshit. I don't know if you followed much of that, but Max and Aaron from the Gray Zone did a great job. It wasn't actually, I forget, I think it was Kit, not Cabello, but Kit McLaren, or whoever the guy that works for the Gray Zone is that went over there. Forgive me, man. It might have been Jeremy Lafredo even, but one of their guys went over to Russia to like the camps supposedly, and it was like a kids loved it. They, like, basically Putin was removing children from like the war zone that had Russian heritage or whatever, and so it wasn't even like they were trying to prosecute him for kidnapping kids or whatever. Anyway, AOC, much like a broken clock, is right every now and then. So just to kind of keep moving here, she was talking about the Israel thing, and I kind of want to jump up to this piece with Dave Smith. Dave Smith basically was on Joe Rogan, and it's a 3-hour podcast, and this is kind of a long clip, but I think it's so refreshing to hear a voice like Dave Smith's out there, especially in more kind of like right-leaning circles, because as we've seen, the Ben Shapiros and the Dave Rubins of the world are definitely hypocrites completely. But Dave Smith is not, and I love what he does here with Joe Rogan, and let's just watch it and talk a little bit about it.
And then, do you have one of their flags? You should wave it around.
Yeah, and we'll provide
wave it
the
around
flags.
in Congress.
So they're talking about Ukraine right here, and Congress. I don't know if you saw that footage of Congress like waving Ukrainian flags after they got the money.
We'll provide the flags. Don't
We'll
worry.
give you flags. They're all uniform, same size. It's not like people bought them from different vendors. No, they all got them from the same. Well, they got a box of them. Hey, make sure you guys grab your flags. It's fucking bonkers.
It's also just so the thing that's so wild to me is that after, and I know I've talked about this, I'm sure, on previous episodes, but just after 20 years of the terror wars and what a disaster those were, and to the point that everyone agreed, John McCain wrote in his memoir that the war in Iraq was a mistake. That's how universally agreed upon it is.
Which is
that the war,
hilarious.
even John McCain would acknowledge we got that one wrong. So, and it's not like anyone else is defending any of the other terror wars at this point. But then as soon as we kind of get out of them, we're not even fully out, but we're mostly out, we just get into these proxy wars in Ukraine and now in Israel that are clearly wars of choice for America. Like, we don't have to be involved in these. We're just still deciding to continue this war machine going.
These last
So, hold on.
two are really important. When they get done, we're done.
Okay, so I'm going to take another sidebar and talk a little bit about Ukraine right now, because that was a good setup for this other bit I have. I got banned from, well, I didn't get banned, but I had a piece removed from TikTok a while back. And all I said was this, and censors be damned. I don't think that it's out of line to say this because I've heard it said now. But I just said, look, if you really care about the Ukraine and you really care about Ukrainians, you would want a quick end to this war because, you know, Ukrainians are dying. And I don't wish that on anyone, Russians either, you know. I think that war is fucking stupid and it doesn't solve anything usually. And I'm not saying that, I'm not naive, you know, I'm not saying it's going to end, but I think that any sensible person should start from a place where that's where violence is the last resort, and we should be doing everything we can to connect and talk and figure things out on a rational human level. I don't think anyone can really argue with that. So I haven't talked much about the Ukraine thing lately, but these recent headlines kind of crossed my path, and I wanted to talk about this because, you know, it's still going. So this is a recent headline from CNN. Everyone will fight. Ukrainian men weigh their options as a new draft law comes into effect. So they are getting ready to conscript a lot of older Ukrainians now as the grind continues. And just watch this clip real quick from CNN.
Could open the door for more people to be conscripted into the military. Debate on a new bill began in a parliamentary committee on Thursday. The proposed changes include lowering the conscription age and introducing mandatory basic training. Ukraine's military has recently requested up to
I swear I've seen this stock footage they're showing before.
500,000 more troops as the country faces a protracted conflict with Russia. The proposals would have to be approved by the full parliament before being signed into law by President Volodymyr Zelensky. Well, for more on that, we're joined by Peter Zalmayev, the director of Eurasian Democracy Initiative. He is speaking to us from Kyiv. Good to have you with us.
Greetings.
Well, Ukraine's military is in need of a huge boost on the front lines. We're hearing that they want 500,000 people. What's it going to take to mobilize that? And what does it say about the current state of war?
Well, the stark reality is that Ukraine's army is old age-wise compared to the enemy. While the average age of Russia's recruits is 35, Ukraine's is 42. And compare that with the U.S. average age of 30. The men currently on the front lines have been added since the very first days of the war, and they clearly need a break. The government has requested, as you said, 500,000, maybe even more will be needed down the line, and it will take significant time and effort, not only to mobilize them, but to train and equip them, and to do it all in pretty short order. The outcome of this effort will no less than make or break Ukraine. This will be absolutely crucial for Ukraine's survival.
So they're talking about 500,000 more troops.
And Peter, of course, next month marks 2 years since Russia launched its invasion of Ukraine. It's been such a long slog. And despite all of Ukraine's gains and its impressive will to fight back, how hard is it to maintain morale right now?
Well, you just can imagine what an icy cold bath it has been for 25, 30, 40-year-old hipsters in Kiev and other Ukrainian cities that after this 2 years of war have been living with pretty much all the urban creature comforts in almost pre-war conditions, excluding obviously the almost daily missile attacks.
I love the way he says that. He's like, they've been living in pretty much, you know, creature comforts, pre-war conditions, except for, of course, the almost daily missile attacks.
But after 2 years of almost exclusively victorious rhetoric on national TV, hard-cold realization has sunk in that unless, like you said, 500,000 get mobilized in short order, get super fast basic training, and be thrown into battle around the
I want to back that up for just a second.
very state, the
He
very
said something there that is very telling. Listen to this.
The almost exclusively victorious rhetoric on national TV, hard-cold realization has sunk in that unless, like you said,
After almost exclusive victorious type rhetoric on national TV. Let me rewind that one more time.
war conditions, excluding obviously the almost daily missile attacks. But after 2 years of almost exclusively victorious rhetoric on national TV, hard-cold realization has sunk in that unless, like you said, 500,000.
That's the same thing that's been going on here. Almost like, oh, we're winning, everyone's winning.
Get mobilized in short order, get super fast basic training, and be thrown into battle around Avdiivka, then the very state, the very Ukraine may be lost. So instead of coffee in Crimea that some of our government officials promised to be able to do by last spring, we're now promised a long and deadly slog in the freezing trenches of the Donbass. So obviously this is demoralizing, but also keep in mind that in any country, it's only a small fraction of men and women who are willing to contemplate sacrificing their life in the battlefield. So
imagine that. So just to give you some sheer numbers here, the population of Ukraine is about 38 million. Do you know what the population of Russia is? 144 million and growing. And so just based on that alone, Ukraine cannot win this war. Like, I don't know if you're a numbers person, but the numbers don't lie. Like, it's pretty much the size of it. Unless we are forced to get involved and it becomes like a world war, it's not going to end well. So let's see what your boy Anthony Blinken has to say about this. Thanks. Thank you, Anthony. We're going to bring in Ukraine war expert now, Victoria Newland. Let's see what she has to say here.
These Russian attacks that are coming from bases inside Russia. So I think there's also a question of whether we, the United States and our allies, ought to give them more help in hitting Russian bases, which heretofore we've not been willing to do. I think if the attacks are coming directly from over the line in Russia, that those bases ought to be fair game, whether they are where missiles are being launched from or where they are where troops are being supplied from. I think it's time for that because Russia has obviously escalated this war, including, as you said at the beginning, attacking Russia's second city, Kharkiv, which is not on the front lines, and trying to decimate it without ever having to put a boot on the ground. So I think it is time to give the Ukrainians more help hitting these bases inside Russia.
I keep expecting this woman to just like peel her face off and reveal Dick Cheney, or revert to her lizard form or something like that. But that is psychotic. These people, and if you don't know who that is, most people who are watching this know who she is, but she was a neocon. She literally was Dick Cheney's underling. And, it says here she was former, she still runs with those. She resigned from her position, but she is responsible for this war and probably through some kind of sub-channel making a bunch of money off of it. But listen to what they're saying. They're ready to push this thing to the next level. And that is fucking insane. And I don't know what else to say about that. So I'm going to have to go to someone who has a much more measured take on Victoria Newland than I do.
Why don't you go back to your home on Whore Island?
Anchorman. Anyway, let's get back to our other war here. I kind of started with Dave Smith and Joe Rogan, but let's get back to them because now they're going to go into the other U.S. proxy war that's currently sucking up all of our tax dollars.
Yeah. That's right. That's right. This is it.
This is it.
Right. It's anyway, man, I will say that I think a lot of the defense of the war in Gaza, which I kind of feel we are even calling a war because it's not, doesn't exactly feel like that's what the term should be.
Well, it's like the Bill Hicks joke. It's only a war when two armies are fighting.
Well, right.
Remember that joke he had about,
vaguely.
About Iraq? They said, "Oh, Bill, Iraq is the fourth largest army." He goes, "Yeah, but after number 3, there's a big drop off." He goes, "The Salvation Army's number 5."
That's a great bit.
It's a great bit.
Well, I mean, but
he had
look,
some great bits about the war.
But in the case of Gaza, it's not even like there's not even a government. I mean, they're a stateless people who have been captive by the Israelis since 1967.
And then they're captive politically in their own country by Hamas.
Right.
And then Hamas does do what this accusation is, that they have their bases under schools and hospitals. They actually do that.
Yeah, I think it's certainly exaggerated at times by the Israelis, but there is no question that they are. Look, they're in this. Gaza is, dude, it's 5 miles wide.
I know, it's crazy.
Gaza's, like
so
you could jog from one side to the other without taking a break.
It's literally
I would take a break.
Way closer, way smaller than here to my club.
Yeah.
Now imagine that. Imagine like an extra 10 miles.
Yeah.
That small track.
So you got to keep in mind that someone like Joe Rogan having a conversation like this is so huge because a lot of the people who listen to his show are not, from the same intellectual circles that you and I probably are on Twitter or whatever. They're not checking into a lot of this stuff. And most of the people I know who would be in his viewing audience have been reciting the propaganda around this, like about anti-Semitism and all that stuff. So major props to Dave Smith for going on here and breaking this down like he does.
Tract of land in the last 5 miles is what's getting the fuck blown out of it.
It is. It's
and for Joe Rogan, as to Joe Rogan as well, for being receptive and kind of adding his own unique commentary as well.
I think 25 by 5. So it's like a marathon by a jog. You know what I mean? Like that's Gaza.
It's so
and
little.
So, no, look, so I'm just saying part of this, and this isn't, I'm not like making any excuses. I mean, there's no question there have been incidents of Hamas like embedding themselves in civilian locations. But also, it's not as if they have a military or a government. It's not as if there's going to be 2 armies that meet themselves on the battlefield here. Hamas is essentially a gang in an Israeli prison that like rose up as the toughest gang there. And yeah, in such a densely populated area, that's the way, as they call it, asymmetric warfare is going to work. I do look, man, I took issue with like a few things that some of the guests you've had on recently have said. Like, I think all of this, a lot of times it comes down to framing, like how you want to look at an issue, and particularly the people who are way behind Israel on this, I feel like always rely on this very strange framing, so they don't have to confront exactly what's going on, and they can kind of look at it in more of an abstract, removed way. Like when you had I'm sorry if I'm saying his name wrong, but Gad, how do you say his last name? Saad. I've read his stuff before, but I always butcher names. But so one of the things he said, which I know I've heard this in every debate I've done on the topic so far, but he said same thing Dennis Prager said to me when we debated, he was like, well, look, if Israel laid down all their arms, there'd be a genocide. If Hamas laid down all their arms, there'd be peace. And forget the fact that I will say I don't agree with the second part of that. I don't think that's clear at all. I think if Hamas laid down all their arms, which essentially the Palestinians are as close to have laid down all their arms as could be.
Isn't everyone looking at it too binary? Like,
well, yeah.
Even if you're supporting the Israelis, even if you're from that position, you have to acknowledge the attacks.
Someone just knocked on my door to invite me to like some kind of church gathering or something. Like no one ever knocks on my door.
It's on AIDS workers. Like it seems to be there's a bunch of targeted attacks on people bringing in food. Well, like Jose Andres' people.
Yeah.
And then there's been more of those. Like there's all these, I think, how many documented attacks are there on aid supply? Because it's a big number.
There's been several, I know, for sure.
I think it's a big number.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's been hard.
It's creepy.
Well, I remember when you had Anyway, just the point I was making
like,
about Gad's thing is that it's also this like, I just hate when people retreat to almost these hypotheticals. It reminds me of Sam Harris's argument about why you were really wrong.
This is so good. Okay. And this is what I love about this, and you'll see it. Joe Rogan is so cute. Like, he tries to play like devil's advocate and be like the bigger man, like, oh no, that's not what he was saying. But this is such a great analogy, and I love Dave Smith for doing this.
With the at least 8 times.
8 times.
Yeah, that's
so
a
8
lot.
times Israeli forces have attacked humanitarian aid convoys and buildings in the Gaza Strip at least 8 times since October, despite being given coordinates to ensure their protection. Human Rights Watch has said in a new report. So they're targeting these people. So you've got some members of the Israeli military that don't give a fuck, and they want to stop these people from getting food.
And well, look, and this has kind of been like egged on. Look, there'll be so much like scrutiny over like some college kids chanting "From the river to the sea." And look, but for the record, if I was in charge of those protests, I'd say stop chanting that, because even if you don't mean it to mean the Jews are, even if you don't mean it that way, which some people will argue they don't, and that's fine. Maybe that's not what you mean. Maybe you mean is from the river to the sea, everyone will be free and whatever. Maybe that's how you mean it. But it's also the same thing Hamas chants, and they clearly mean something else when they say that.
Exactly.
So like maybe just use a different term.
Right. You can't use a swastika for its old-timey use.
Right. It's like, if nothing else, it's a bad idea.
Yeah.
However, for all the scrutiny there'll be over what these 20-year-olds are hollering at Columbia, when Benjamin Netanyahu is saying they're Amalek as you're going into this area, which, you know, the story from the Bible is that you're supposed to kill the women and the children. And the story is that they fucked up by not killing all the women and the children. And then like they came back and like, now, even if you could argue he doesn't mean it that way, it's like, okay, but you're saying
Amalek
that,
the story from the Bible?
The story is they were like a tribe who was like an evil tribe, and you had to kill all of them, kill the women and the children. And that's the specific like lesson of that story, is that you're supposed to kill the women and the children. And then you conduct a campaign like this. This is, by the way, this is what was in the South Africa case that they brought to the UN, and that they, you know, the ICJ basically said that Israel is plausibly committing a genocide.
AOC was good on that way, by the way. Now, a couple things he said there I think are so key. First, he talks about the river to the sea thing and the PR behind it. It doesn't matter what you say, they're going to find a way to make it anti-Semitic. So I don't know that he's wrong about that either. Like, maybe it's not the best messaging for the protests. It's the same thing with like defund the police, right? Like people get mad about that. They're like, oh, that'll never work, you know, but it's not like that's what people expect to actually happen. The thing is, with these types of arguments, you have to start from a very extreme position, because eventually you're going to negotiate and have to give up some compromise, you know? And so I think in the past, you know, in my political history, I feel like the Republicans were always so good at starting their argument from such an extreme position that they pulled the Democrats to the right eventually in the compromise. And maybe and I'm sure now that that's intentional on the Democrats' part too, because they're the apathetic, you know, let's go along to get along party who's just been slowly dragged to the right over the years, to the point where now they are the far right. But anyway, let's keep going.
And they didn't exactly, you know, they haven't yet determined that it is or isn't, but they said it's plausible. But anyway, to my point that I'm making about what Sad was saying is that it reminds me of Sam Harris, where he sits here and he goes, well, imagine this hypothetical. Imagine COVID was 100 times as deadly and the vaccine was perfect against stopping transmission and there were no vaccine injuries. Well, hey, now you don't look so good anymore, do you, Joe Rogan?
No, he wasn't.
Exactly. Yeah. Imagine this hypothetical scenario where I'm right.
He wasn't saying that. He was saying you could, when someone's saying you could never mandate a vaccine or argue for a mandate, and he was saying if there was a vaccine, you could. He was making an intellectual argument. He's correct that you could argue that if there.
I love Joe Rogan ties himself in knots right here to try and justify this, and he just can't. It's like Chris Cuomo when he was asked about ivermectin, and he's like, Joe Rogan. Now people are going to say Joe Rogan was right, and then he pauses and he's like, okay, Joe Rogan was right.
There was a vaccine that had 0 side effects and was 100% effective, and if everybody took it, the disease stops. You could make that argument.
Well, what he was
But
saying was that then
it
how
doesn't
would we feel?
exist.
But he goes,
Right.
then how would
Yeah, that doesn't exist. It's a hypothetical.
we feel about what Joe Rogan is saying and what RFK is saying when they were, you know what I mean? But the point is
that thing
that's
doesn't
not
exist.
the hypothetical. Like that.
Well,
okay,
not only
fine.
that, it doesn't exist
Yes.
in nature.
Right,
Like,
right.
There's no vaccines that are 100% safe with no side effects. None of them.
I'm just saying I'm not against engaging in a.
So I drive rideshare, and last night, actually lately, I've talked to a lot of people. So last night I picked up this married couple, had a baby at home. They were drunk, very cool people, much younger than me, probably, brand new baby. And the husband gets in, I can tell he's real drunk. And then the wife gets in, and they had to switch seats. And as he's like getting out, she's like, just ignore him. He's really drunk or whatever. So we get in, we start talking, and then they said something. We got driving, and the wife in the back said something. She's like, Biden's America. And I was like, yeah. And they're like, and then I said something about, they're like, sorry if that offends you or something. And I said, no, this is a free speech car. And they're like, oh, we like that. And then we got to talking, and they were telling me about how she was a liberal until COVID. And that's when she started to question this stuff. And so I think that I love that, people are coming around to the idea that all this division shit has to stop. And yeah, you can disagree with people on an issue by issue basis. You can disagree with people, but when it comes down to all this stuff, we all have a lot in common. We all have the same goals and the same, anyway, the end of that conversation got to like, everyone should just be able to do what they want and be left alone. And I think that in the past, it got me thinking is like, when I was a Democrat or when I was like a liberal back in the day, the threat was always that, hey, the Republicans want to take away abortion rights and take away gay people's right to marry and stuff like that. And I think that the right has evolved enough to the point where, the people in the populist right anyway, have evolved enough to the point where they're like, I don't care. They're more libertarian. They're like, let gay people get married. Just stay the fuck out of my life. Let people get a vax or not get a vax. Just don't tell me what I need to do. And I think that you could, you see it with the Republican evolution on the abortion thing. Trump literally came out and said he is the de facto leader of the party. He's like, we're not going to fight abortion rights. He actually came out against the IVU thing that happened in Alabama, the stupid ass, because they banned it's so dumb. And he actually came out and was like, that's really dumb. Like, we actually want to promote people having babies, and this helps people have babies. So it's stupid. Anyway,
thought experiment to think about like what that scenario would look like. But at the same time, you're like, it does seem like that's serving in this case as a distraction from the real world scenario that's going on here. So like, if you're going to,
yeah, intellectual Sam Harris is making that argument. I'm sorry. Fuck you, Sam Harris. If this happened, then I would be right. It's like, yeah, if it did, but it didn't happen, you dipshit.
say if Israel, like, yes, I would not recommend Israel lay down all of their arms, completely disarm themselves, and then open up the wall to Gaza and allow Hamas to come in. But that's not on the table. That's never going to happen. So like, even thinking about that as a thought experiment doesn't really prove that much. What's actually going on?
So I want to make this point again, because I used to debate people about guns all the time, and I'm not anti-gun, but this is the exact same thing that they do with all these types of debates. With guns specifically, you'll go, hey, we should really have better gun laws so less people get shot. And then they're like, no, you can't ban all guns. And it's like, no, I did not say let's ban all guns. I never said that. I said, hey, we should be a little bit more careful. With great power comes great responsibility. That's why to get a car, you have to have a driver's license, and you have to be a certain age, and you have to pass certain tests to ensure that you're mentally stable and you're not going to hurt people. We should have that for guns on some, and the people that are like, oh, well, it's a slippery slope. Like, once you start that, then the government's going to come take it. Like, you have a fucking gun. You're always like, gun people are like, oh, like, I got a gun to protect myself. They're like, but if they change the gun laws, the government's going to come take my gun. Well, you got a gun. Fucking shoot them. Like, they're not going to come take your gun, asshole. Anyway, I'm drifting away from the point. The point is, people use this tactic in arguments all the time. Like, well, what if this? Like, no, let's deal with finite realities, okay? Not hypotheticals. And the Israel people use hypotheticals all day long. And I just love the way Dave Smith kind of like methodically picks that apart right here.
On here is like what Israel is doing to Gaza. And, you know.
Right. But if you could flip it around, the opposite would be true. Like if Hamas did lay down all their weapons and if they did completely give up, you're going to have some Israeli soldiers that do not give a fuck that still want to shoot them. But for the most part, if there was nothing, if they completely gave up, which is also not going to happen, but if that did happen, you couldn't see a situation where Israel just continues bombing.
Yes, you could.
Maybe not, but then what do they go to? Just being subjugated by the Israel, back to the status quo of just being a stateless people of permanent refugees with no natural rights whatsoever, no ability to trade with the world, no ability to come and leave. You can't have an airport, you can't have a seaport, you can't go out fishing past where some IDF guy decides you're not allowed to. So, like, yeah, if Hamas laid down all their arms, perhaps Israel would stop the bombing campaign, and they would just continue subjugation forever. Which has been the Likud party official policy since they were created by the terrorist Menachem Begin. Like, literally since this party that is the ruling party in Israel was created, their goal has been that the Palestinian people never get their own state, they never get their own freedom, and that's resulted in this.
And if you don't give them their own there's no way you can justify it. No way you can justify that a whole entire group of people never get to be a country. That they don't get the rights of the Israelis. They don't get the rights of a sovereign country. They're trapped.
Yeah, nothing. Literally no rights whatsoever.
That's kind
And people on the right, I've had people literally call like Hamas. I've seen it. That Prager guy in his debate with Dave Smith tried to equate Palestinians to Nazis. The Nazis had an entire army and state behind them. These, like Dave said, these guys are permanent refugees. But I really like the climate today because you have people like Dave Smith and Tucker Carlson and, you know, Candace Owens who are intellectually honest on the right about what's going on. And I love to see that. Like I said, I value consistency over anything. And, you know, I'll probably sound like a broken record on that. But keeping on this theme of unity across political cult lines, one of my favorite shows of the last couple of years, and I mean, I've played several clips from it, of course, but has been Judge Napolitano's show. And I think it's so sweet and cute to see like the friendship that he's developed with Max and Aaron and Anya. And he's like, he totally crushing on Anya. You can see it. And he even made some oft comment to Max in one of their interviews about, he's like, oh, the beautiful Anya like gave me a kiss. I hope that didn't upset you. And Max is like, well, it didn't happen long enough for me to intervene or something like that. Anyway, this starts with a very cool thing, which I think is like the beginning of a new anti-war coalition, and it's so fucking beautiful. Watch this.
The book party for our dear mutual friend Anya Parampil, at which you and her husband Max Blumenthal and she spoke to a wonderful, wonderful crowd. I was hiding in the back of the crowd until it was over, and then I jumped up on stage to hug and kiss you guys. It was there you go. There's the beautiful Anya and the handsome Max and the stately Aaron and the old Judge.
It was a great surprise, Judge, and thank you so much for making it out. Your support means a lot.
Well, it was terrific, and it was a great, great audience. Young, seriously pro-peace people hugging and kissing this ex-Fox guy, something from 5 or 10 years ago I couldn't have imagined. It was deeply, deeply moving for me as I left that group.
Deeply, deeply moving for me. You love to see that, man. Like that's the one silver lining to all the fucking terror that's happening in the world right now. And again, like I get a little dramatic about that, but it's like there's not terror where I live, you know. So I can't even complain that much. But to see these kind of alliances starting to kind of coalesce is a beautiful thing. But let's get into the meat of what these guys were talking about, because they hit on a lot of good subjects. So first of all, this whole Orwellian thing, war is peace.
What did Joe Biden consider a good day for peace recently?
Joe Biden considered a good day for peace the day he signed his so-called foreign aid package into law, $95 billion to fuel carnage in Gaza, in Ukraine, and why not China as well, with money going towards Taiwan to fuel conflict there. And Joe Biden at the Oval Office declared his signing of that measure, that bipartisan measure, a good day for world peace.
You know what your boy Blinken celebrated doing, right, when this passed? Keep on bombing lots of people. I won't make you sit through that whole thing again. I just had to interject that.
Literally asserting that war is peace. That's basically what he was saying.
Right.
And we're seeing the results now. He has continued to deliver weapons to Israel despite briefly pausing just one package. And again, it's important to stress that that hold was not stopping that package of weapons to Israel. It was a pause. And it was just for PR. It was just to show all these college students and all these outraged Democrats that he's hearing them while really in real life doing absolutely nothing to address their concerns. The White House made clear that Israel has all the weapons it needs to attack Rafah. So they're free to ignore Biden's public admonitions to not attack Rafah because they have all the weapons from Biden that they need. So it's very fitting that Biden can call his enactment of a massive war funding measure, a huge transfer of money to the military industrial complex, a good day for world peace. Because in his eyes, pausing weapons while enabling the mass murder campaign in Gaza is to him taking action against Israel. So everything is window dressing.
These guys are so good at PR. These Obama era cats. They just got really good at the window dressing thing, didn't they? So here he is talking about the war lobby.
Which has the tighter vice grip on the American government, the Israeli lobby or the military-industrial complex?
Well, they're a good team. They work in tandem, and certainly whatever the Israeli lobby wants always benefits the military-industrial complex.
So a lot of people don't know this, but I kind of caught this morning, and I wanted to share it with you. This has been going on far longer than you think. Look at this. Jake Shields posted this, and it's an article from the New York Post in 1999, March 3rd of 1999. And he says, it's insane how our media ignored this story. I wonder who runs our media. That's anti-Semitic a little bit. You know, it is what it is. But he kind of has this follow-up tweet that's also real interesting. And it says, the Israeli Mossad recorded phone calls of a sexual nature between President Bill Clinton and Monica Lewinsky. They used this to try and get him to release the notorious spy Jonathan Pollard. Clinton wouldn't release him, so the story ended up in the hands of Matt Drudge, who is Jewish. This turned the Drudge Report into a massive website. I did not know that. I did not know that Drudge came out of the Lewinsky thing, but it makes sense. His assistant, Andrew Breitbart, later flew to Israel and met with Benjamin Netanyahu and decided to launch Breitbart News. Breitbart masquerades as conservative media while pushing propaganda for Israel. I mean, every media outlet masquerades as something while pushing propaganda for Israel. Anyway, let's get back to Aaron.
And it's very striking. You have groups like the Anti-Defamation League, which is supposed to be a civil rights organization, right? Purportedly. They're even weighing in and denouncing Biden for putting a hold on these weapons to Israel. What does that do with civil rights in the U.S.? And it just underscores that all this concern about anti-Semitism on campus and this hysteria we're seeing from Congress. It's not about anti-Semitism. It's not about protecting Jews. It's about protecting the right of Israel to carry out its military operation against Gaza.
So one more real quick thing to share on the ADL front. Actually, this is actually really good too. My boy Ian Carroll had this post about Nick Fuentes, and they're trying to get Nick taken down, and he says, yeah, or don't go to the. So they say, we are concerned with that white supremacist influencer Nick Fuentes may be officially welcome back on X. While ADL recognizes the right to free speech, we must also sound the alarm on hate and anti-Semitism in all its forms. Learn more about Fuentes here. Now, I don't know that much about Nick Fuentes. I've heard him say, stuff that is questionable in clips that I've seen. But by the same token, I've never heard him say anything like outright violent and whatever. If he's really a racist anti-Semite, let the guy talk. Let him, expose himself as the terrible person that he is. But, I think, and so Ian makes the point here. Yeah, don't go to the ADL, read an article of them defaming someone when you can just listen to Nick Fuentes yourself. This is why they want to ban people from the public square, so they can write their own narrative, and the defamed are deplatformed so they can't defend themselves.
ADL is played out. Nobody knows who the ADL are. Stop giving them attention. Nobody cares about the ADL.
You can, which has the tighter vice grip on the American government?
So actually,
the Israeli lobby or the military-industrial complex?
This is the same clip I just played. Let me load up this next clip about the military-industrial complex.
Act that Truman committed. Do you think the U.S. is committed to perpetual war because of the military-industrial complex?
Hold on. I think we need a comment right here from Mr. Antony Blinken.
Keep on bombing lots of people. Keep on bombing lots of people.
I'm so sorry.
Because of the military-industrial complex?
Absolutely.
Committed. Do you think the U.S. is committed to perpetual war because of the military-industrial complex?
Absolutely. And, we've gotten the highest level warning of that from Eisenhower, when he warned about the power of the military-industrial complex. And, he's been proven to be true so many times. There's recently a study saying that world military spending has hit an all-time high, largely because of the war in Ukraine, who are the prime beneficiaries of this recent so-called Ukraine security assistance package. If you look at the breakdown of that bill, so $61 billion earmarked in the name of Ukraine, at least $48 billion of that goes right to the Pentagon and arms manufacturers. So much of that won't even ever reach Ukraine. It's just to replenish U.S. stockpiles. So absolutely, we are run by the military-industrial complex and all their various other allies, including the Israel lobby, which certainly has every interest in, transferring more and more U.S. taxpayer dollars into these weapons companies so they can be shipped off to Israel.
So there you have it. The reason that I clipped that one in particular is when he talks about military spending is at an all-time high. That's an interesting stat, isn't it? Because remember when we drew down from Afghanistan and everyone was so upset? Like, I love the conservatives. They're all upset. Like, Biden didn't get out of Afghanistan right. Trump started the drawdown and Biden ended it. And who fucking cares? How many trillions of dollars have we already dumped into that garbage can? And you're like, oh, he left a couple troops there and we're going to make a big deal out of it. It's another instance where the Republicans show their political cult, membership, where they're like, oh, I'm going to make a big deal out of this stupid shit. Let's get the fuck out of there. I don't get, you got to break a few eggs to get the fuck out. You got to leave a couple Jeeps or whatever behind. Fine. Just get the fuck out of Afghanistan. Like, what are we? Now we're in Ukrainistan. Anyway, I digress. Here's another beautiful clip of Napolitano and Mate talking about Ukraine.
So my question is this cash going to go into the pockets of the corrupt? Is it going to do anything militarily other than maybe postpone the inevitable until after November 4th?
Well, I can only go by what we've learned so far. And what happened last year? All this money, all this training, all this preparation went into Ukraine's counteroffensive. This was going to be the one that was going to push Russia back. Everybody declared this. NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg, Biden administration officials, everybody said that Ukraine was going to take back Russian territory with all this equipment we've given them, all these game changers. Remember the Leopard tanks from Germany were going to be a game changer.
Right.
ATACMS were going to be a game changer. HIMARS were going to be a game changer. Nothing's happened. And in fact, the counteroffensive was such a failure that, according to the New York Times, the Pentagon doesn't even call it a counteroffensive anymore. That's how badly it went last year. So based on what we've seen so far, is there anything to tell us that the result will be any different? No. And we're seeing it now. The main problem for Ukraine, which no amount of U.S. Weaponry and assistance dollars can change, is they don't have enough people to fight. They're running out of people. They've sacrificed so many of them. Zelensky's tried to address that by lowering the age of conscription, but it's still not enough. And this week, Ukraine's military intelligence chief warned of that. We just don't have the people to fight. And that's been Russia. No one's been more aware of that than Russia, which, if you look at their strategy, it's pretty clear. They're just trying to grind Ukraine down in this long war of attrition until they just don't have the people anymore. And that's where it's headed.
And we just covered that, of course, with this conscription age level that they're lowering. So check out on the whole idea, the whole Orwellian thing. Listen to Mitt Romney clown himself, and he sounds like a Democrat.
Someone like me, it's unimaginable that in the party of Ronald Reagan and George Herbert Walker Bush and George W. Bush and John McCain and others, that we would see a growing isolationism within our party. I think it flows in part from talk TV, talk radio, the Tucker Carlson.
Isolationism. This goes back to what Dave Smith and Joe Rogan were talking about, where Dave Smith said, people make these hypothetical arguments. It's a straw man argument. No one is arguing for isolationism. What we're arguing for is accountability and, transparency into how this is happening, which is just not there right now.
Of the world that
Never heard of them.
Exactly, that say outrageous things, and the base says, yeah, exactly. And so many in our party have followed that populist streak, which is, hey, stop worrying about the rest of the world. Just worry about what's going on here. What they're forgetting is that we are connected to the rest of the world, that our economy is connected to the rest of the world, that if we'd have had that attitude, then Germany would have ended up ruling the world. All right.
Okay. And I just have to pick this apart again, because first of all, again, no one is arguing that we completely withdraw from the world. Second of all, the World War II thing, again, like Mitt Romney, I don't know if you know this, but we've had a lot of wars since World War II, and the framing is always World War II, because that, of course, is the last war where we were the good guys.
We're involved in the world out of our own self-interest. I laugh at the phrase America first. I know it typically means, isolationism, but really.
I laugh at the phrase America first. I've said this before, but if you let these people talk long enough, they will tell you who they are. They will absolutely tell you who they are. And Mitt Romney just did. He laughs at the phrase America first. He also ties his dog to the roof of his car when he goes on vacation.
America is putting ourselves first when we're involved in the world, when we stop bad people. Look, if Vladimir Putin goes not just through Ukraine, but then decides to go into Poland, then we're involved in conflict with our sons and daughters going to war. Or we could walk away from NATO, in which case Putin is going to keep on going and going. How about a world where China and Russia control the world and we have our own little island?
We're creating that with what we're doing now, dipshit. Oh my God. No one annoys me more than Mitt Romney, because I grew up in Utah and he is absolutely one of these like really fake corporate pious like Mormon types who's like, I'm so proper and prim and decorum and yeah, I'm so but I laugh at America first. he's like a programmed robot. He has no fucking clue. He's just saying what he's been programmed to say.
That's not a world where Americans are going to be safe or prosperous. We're safe and prosperous.
We're not safe and prosperous now, you dip fuck.
When the world follows the orders that have existed over the last 75 years with a strong NATO, strong allies, strong friends, and where America stands for something like freedom.
I am a puppet of the regime. Mitt Romney. Puppet Incorporated. All right. I have so much stuff in here today. What am I going to pivot to now? Okay, he talked about Tucker Carlson in there, the Tucker Carlsons of the world and how evil they are. So I got a little clip about, I don't know if you know this recently, but here's basically what happened. A Russian show clipped Tucker Carlson off Twitter and played like a clip from his show. And the media, Newsweek particularly, said that he had a show on Russian television. So I'm just going to do a quick Google search here and share this headline with you since I didn't actually clip it. But this is what the actual headline said on this. I mean, it's still up. Like it hasn't been changed. They didn't ask this guy to comment on it at all. I'll get rid of this ad. So here's the headline. Tucker Carlson show aired by Russian state TV published May 21st, 2024 on Newsweek.com. Here's what Tucker himself has to say about this headline. Listen closely.
Apologize because I didn't start off by congratulating you on your one of the most honest outlets out there, Newsweek, reporting your massive contract you signed with Russian TV. Congratulations on that.
It's just part of my ongoing business relationship with Vladimir Putin. No, they, of course, I never even contemplated. I have no idea what they're talking about. I have nothing to do with Russian media. I couldn't even identify 3 Russian media outlets. Of course, I don't speak Russian. But that's a pretext for a FISA warrant. So you put that out there, and you know, Newsweek knows this, and they're mad at me for other reasons, of course. And they put this out there, and all of a sudden it gives the Biden administration, you know, an excuse to spy on me, which they are.
That is exactly what they did to Donald Trump during the campaign process. Once you read back through Jeff Girth, very reliable journalist in the Columbia Journalism Review, did an entire breakdown on this where he goes thoroughly into the weeds. That's exactly what they did to Donald Trump. They had a guy that they knew was a CIA asset. They accused Trump of working with Russia so that they could get FISA warrants to spy on him. Very astute observation.
But, and have been over the last several years. But what's crazy is you can live in a country where that's completely illegal.
Mm-hmm.
And everyone knows it's happening and nobody says anything about it. And the only people who do say anything about it, like Julian Assange or Ed Snowden, like they're the ones facing life in prison.
This goes back to what I was saying again about the coalition that's forming between the populist right and left. And we're going to crescendo with the Mumford Sons guy. But
it's like, you know, it's a little bit upside down. I would say, no, but that story, look, the media don't just mislead you. They're not just, you know, worker bees for the Democratic Party. They're, you know, they want to hurt you. Like actually hurt you, like put you in prison or kill you. Like they're that involved in the machinery of internal repression in this country. So,
you're not saying that the DOJ would ever give permission to use deadly force when they're invading a former
when
president.
They're going through Melania's underwear drawers.
That would never.
So this is something I didn't know either that they talk about here real quick about apparently when they raided Trump's home, they gave permission to use deadly force. So he could have literally been assassinated by the FBI.
Never happened.
Yeah,
She,
if
like you
Melania
said,
shows up and says, "Why are you going through my nightgowns?"
boom.
Bam!
Yeah.
Deadly force.
Deadly force.
So I would say that the problem that we have as as people who are not part of the machine, you don't even need to be. It's not even a right or left question. It's are you.
I thought that framing was so funny too, because I whenever someone says the machine, of course, I think of Rage Against the Machine, and it's interesting that people like Tucker Carlson now refer to it as the machine.
Are you on the side of lies or are you not? Is we don't understand just how serious they are.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you were running DOJ and you saw a search warrant that said, yes, the use of deadly force applies in a documents case, a classified documents case. By the way, the documents were meaningless. No one's ever shown otherwise. Doesn't matter. You can put them on the internet now. It just doesn't matter, actually. And if you were the attorney general and you were looking through the warrant and said use of deadly force is allowed, you'd say, whoa, 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 whoa. We're literally rooting through Melania's dresser. We don't need to use deadly. Wouldn't you say that just as someone who believes in fairness and sanity?
The fact that you're putting that in there to give permission, and it's just kind of, water under, no worries. Next news cycle, it's not a big story. Next news cycle, it's not a big story.
But what does it say? It says that they're serious enough to kill you. Absolutely they are. Gonzalo Lira got murdered in Ukraine.
Who else is talking about Gonzalo Lira?
Ukrainian prison, that's of course run by the State Department and CIA, basically killed by the Biden administration. No big deal.
Well, I mean, at least
he's an American citizen.
But at least the confidence comes the fact that never in the history of U.S. has the government ever assassinated a president. So it's not like that kind of a person who's a very ambitious vice president would never do that to become a president historically, and within minutes want to be sworn in. It
sounds like a dangerous conspiracy theory to me. So let me ask you though.
So another flat out fabrication, character assassination is totally par for the course. Of course, in this day and age, you're just a Russian disinformationist if you speak anything against the narrative whatsoever. I have so much stuff to go through, and I didn't do a good job of organizing today. So let's pivot to this. I do want to play this clip about it's a story about marijuana legalization from MSNBC, and I went into it kind of thinking that there's going to be a lot for me to scream about, but it's actually pretty solid. I don't know who this guy is, but his name is Gupta, so I assumed he was related to Sanjay Gupta, but I think that that's probably just a common Indian name, and I'm just a white guy. So check this out. This is a story just about the decriminalization.
Now use cannabis every day, then drink alcohol. That is the first time that's ever happened in this country. A new study from 2022 shows that the estimated 17.7 million Americans who say they use cannabis daily or near daily is 3 million more than those who drink every day. And another study out just yesterday shows there's an 11 times higher risk of developing a psychotic disorder like schizophrenia, anxiety, and depression for teenagers who have used cannabis within the last year. Joining me now, global health policy expert and
So I think that's interesting for a couple reasons. First of all, congratulations, my fellow stoners. We're winning. If you've ever been a drinker, though, and I have, it hurts. Especially when you get older, it fucks your body up. Cannabis does not. Cannabis is a much better recreational drug than alcohol is. Of course, there's a lot of money behind alcohol. There's a lot of money behind cannabis now, in a business sense. And I think that's one of the reasons there's such a huge push to decriminalize it, because it's a massive industry, of course. But now, of course, they're going to scaremonger it's going to hurt teens. Listen, pretty much everyone I grew up with smoked pot on a regular basis in their teens, and we're all fine. I'm not saying that it's okay for kids to smoke pot in their teens or that you should encourage it. I'm not encouraging it. I think that not daily. I mean, I think it's better than pretty much anything else to experiment with as a kid. But they're going to try to fearmonger a little bit about it. But this guy actually speaks a lot of sense. So listen to what he has to say.
MSNBC medical contributor Dr. Vin Gupta. Good to see you. Doctor, the ship has sailed. Cannabis is legal in 23 states and D.C., I think 38 in D.C. with medical marijuana.
I love that. The ship has sailed.
But big picture, what should folks know and what don't we know about daily use?
Well, so Chris, thank you for highlighting this. Great to see you. It's important to say up front, FDA scientists have looked at the data that exists on marijuana, recreational, medical, said it's not as prone to abuse. And it might be, it shouldn't be as tightly controlled as other substances that are Schedule 1, things like heroin. I think we can all agree that if this is being used every single day, more so than alcohol, which we don't control as tightly as marijuana, that we need to loosen it. Hence the Biden administration moving it to Schedule 3, which is critical because it allows federal money, Chris, to actually be now utilized to do gold standard studies on the
They show this stock footage of people smoking pot on a loop. It's great while he's starting.
risks and potential benefits of marijuana in the human body. We know health benefits are potentially numerous. Again, no gold standard study has been used to look at these benefits, but maybe to alleviate pain, fibromyalgia, insomnia, chemo-related impacts. But as you pointed out, there's serious potential concerns here, especially amongst youth, that it could be impacting youth brain development, and that's the big concern.
Yeah.
I saw someone in the comments of Dave Smith's Joe Rogan appearance, and they said something to the effect of, it's taken the government like 70 years to research cannabis, but the vaccine was approved in 72 hours. You got a point.
What about this use among kids? And should we be worried that this could mean problems for teenagers in their development?
Potentially. And so that is one of the concerns here. Most places, you had mentioned the states, over 20, where we have recreational marijuana use. What we're seeing is it's usually 21 and older. These studies have shown association, not causation. Important to point that out. That's why we need gold standard studies. Hopefully that's going to happen soon. But what they pointed out is that the youth brain and teenagers still developing, and that cannabis can actually interfere potentially with some important signaling that's happening in brain development. So
I would argue that alcohol does a lot more damage. I'm not saying that what this guy is touting is untrue, but given what I know about how the medical research industry works, after the last couple of years, I highly doubt I would like to see who funded his study, what the abstract says, all that kind of stuff, because as we know, there are always moneyed interest behind this. And the fact that they're pushing for like a 21 age gap thing, it's like you can see the Anheuser-Busch and the alcohol lobbies in there going like, hey, we need a fair market, at least make it so they have to be 21, we got to be on equal footing.
Our functions that govern anxiety, basic development of our neurons in our brain might actually get disrupted as youth brains develop. And so that's why you're seeing the stronger correlation between frequent high potency cannabis use and maybe the development of some of these psychiatric disorders. This is not the first of these studies. We've seen a lot of anecdotal reports, but we need gold standard studies to really prove it out.
And again, I love this like obfuscating too, because every fucking pharmaceutical drug, oh my God, I wish I would have recorded this one. I saw a commercial the other day that like it had this guy like excited about a game, but then it lists the side effects and it's like explosive diarrhea, risk of death, like all this stuff. Like, holy shit, like
There was one study I found, Vin, from back in February. It showed people who smoke cannabis daily have a 25% increased risk of having a heart attack, a 42% increase of having a stroke.
That is, again, something I would like to go into the weeds on, because they did some shit recently about how intermittent fasting causes heart attacks. So I'm very skeptical of that data. I'm not saying it's not true, but
I know you sort of mentioned this in your first answer, but how many more studies, do we need to do here? Are we behind on where we are as a country and the use of cannabis and where we should be in understanding what the implications are?
I think we're going to be careful about cannabis. I think we're going to be careful about cannabis. I think we're going to be careful about cannabis. I think we're going to be careful about cannabis. I think we're going to be careful about cannabis. I think we're going to be careful about cannabis. I think we're going to be careful about cannabis. I think we're going to be careful about cannabis. I think we're going to be careful about cannabis. I think we're going to be careful about cannabis. I think we're going to be careful about cannabis. I think we're going to be careful about cannabis. I think we're going to be careful about cannabis. I think we're going to be careful about cannabis. I think we're going to be careful about cannabis. I think we're going to be careful about cannabis. I think we're going to be careful about cannabis. I think we're going to be careful about cannabis. I think we're going to be careful about cannabis. I think we're going to be careful about cannabis. I think we're going to be careful about cannabis. I think we're going to be careful about cannabis. I think we're going to be car 1000%, Chris. I mean, to give you a sense, we've been studying the impacts of alcohol, red wine on the human body for the last 50 years, plus gone back and forth on potential benefits and risks. We've been studying it. Now we have some clarity, potentially. We haven't done that with marijuana in any rigorous way because we haven't had the resources to do it. When the government says it's Schedule 1, what does that mean? That means NIH dollars cannot be utilized to study the risks and benefits of medical marijuana, recreational marijuana on the human body. It's been a big lapse. So this movement towards Schedule 3, yes, it means decriminalization, all the important things for social justice, for individual justice. But what this is going to allow us to do is to actually be smarter about the risks and benefits of marijuana on the human body. We're very far behind.
Dr. Vin Gupta, always good to have you on the program.
So, cautiously optimistic there. I'm very skeptical of what these studies are going to look like once they come out and who's going to be behind the funding. Because it's like, oh, we still just don't know, like we can't look at guys like Willie Nelson who've been smoking weed for their entire lives and are 90 years old and say like, hey, he looks like he's pretty okay. So, anyway, let me go to the comments for a second. We got a lot of them came from Brooklyn. That's Extra Bowl. I'm Willie. Hey, thanks for tuning in, guys. I've been on for a long time already, but I think I'm going to wrap it up with one last bit that I thought was interesting, and it involves the guy from Mumford Sons. I don't know if you've seen any of this stuff, but I have to say, he does, in some cases, kind of err a little bit further right than I would like. Like he says something about George Galloway in one of these clips that kind of struck me. By the same token, he's at least intellectually honest, or trying to be, about everything. He brings up guys like Corbyn and Sanders when he talks about populism. So basically, this is kind of a continuation of a piece I did a while ago where I covered this monk debate between Steve Bannon and David Frum. And if you have not seen that, highly, highly recommend. It's like political necessity if you care about politics and you follow politics. Like, that was such a huge turning point, I think, in the intellectual nature of the parties. And Frum proves it because he's a neocon who comes out and argues the liberal side, calls Bannon a racist and all this stuff. And then Bannon actually ends up flipping the crowd by explaining, and Bannon's not perfect either. He's flawed. He definitely has some right-wing leaning things, but I think there's a lot that a guy like Bannon has in common with the Bernie Sanders left. And he knows that. And, I think that like, those are the type of people that need to come together in a lot of ways. So anyway, watch this this first clip with this guy's name is Winston, and I've never been a fan of Mumford Sons on any level. I will say that right out the gate, but let me see who I should play first. Okay, I'm going to play this one first. I'm not sure if this is Pelosi or Winston, but either way. Okay, yeah. So this is the guy from Mumford Sons.
Words have a tendency to change meaning. When I was a boy, woman meant someone who didn't have a cock.
So right off the bat, he's won the room.
Populism has become a word used synonymously with racist. We've heard ethno-nationalist, with bigot, with hillbilly, redneck, with deplorables. Elites use it to show their contempt for ordinary people. This is a recent change. Not long ago, Barack Obama, while still president at the North America's Leaders Summit in June 2016, he took umbrage with the notion that Trump be called a populist. How could Trump be called a populist? He doesn't care about working people. If anything, Obama argued, he was the populist. If anything, Obama argued, Bernie was the populist. It was Bernie who'd spent 5 decades fighting for working people. But Trump, something curious happens. If you watch Obama's speeches after that point.
Just to pause for a second. I think this is one of the things about Trump that a lot of people don't understand who are liberal. And if you're on board with what I'm talking about, you get it. But like the thing with Trump isn't that he's like some populist savior. You know, he's a fucking rich jackass from Manhattan who shits on a golden toilet. But he is a counterweight to the establishment. And, you know, he's still so intertwined with that establishment too. But the fact that he makes all these people mad is why he's like the populist, you know, vessel, I guess, so to speak. It's not like the idea that he's a rich guy. Yeah, he's a rich guy too, but he pisses all you guys off enough, and he actually, you know, at least speaks to the working man enough that, yeah, like they'll let the other stuff slide because he makes all you assholes mad.
More and more recently, he uses the word populist interchangeably with strongman, with authoritarian. The word changes meaning. It becomes a negative, a pejorative, a slur. To me, populism is not a dirty word. Since the 2008 crash, and specifically the $1 trillion...
I used to think that like the Republicans were insane for saying that the Democrats always weaponize racism and all that shit. And then we just covered the beginning of this show was them weaponizing racism to cover for the fact that they all have ties to the judge who's prosecuting Trump. And so, yeah, it's apparent that this is the shield that they use consistently with everything. Populism is racism, you know. That guy's a racist. That guy's an anti-Semite. That guy's white supremacist or white nationalist.
Wall Street bailout. We are in the populist age. And for good reason. The elites have failed. Let me address some common fallacies, some of which have been made tonight. If the motion was that demagoguery was a threat to democracy, I would be on that side of the House. If the motion was that political violence was a threat to democracy, I'd be on that side of the House. January 6th has been mentioned. A dark day for America indeed. And I'm sure Congresswoman Pelosi will agree.
Not really.
That the entire month of June 2020, when the federal courthouse in Portland, Oregon was under siege and under insurrection by radical progressives, those two...
A dark day for American television.
...were dark days for America. Yes?
There is no equivalence there. So, yes.
So you don't agree? That's fine, you don't agree, that's fine.
But it is not like what happened on January 6th, which was an insurrection incited by the President of the United States.
So you don't agree?
Yeah, January 6th was not an insurrection incited by the President of the United States. I'm sorry if I'm going to get, you know, demonetized or whatever for saying that, but that's just the truth.
But you'll condemn those days. My point, though, is that all political movements are susceptible to violence and indeed insurrection. And if we were arguing that fascism was a threat to democracy, I'd be on that side of the House. Indeed, the current populist age is a movement against fascism. I've got quite a lot to get through. Populism, as you know, is the politics of the ordinary people against an elite. Populism is not a threat to democracy. Populism is democracy. And why else have universal suffrage, if not to keep elites in check?
That is a very good point. Universal suffrage.
Ladies and gentlemen, given the success of Trump, and more recently Javier Milei taking a chainsaw to the state behemoth of Argentina's bureaucratic empire.
So this is where he loses me a little bit, but he brings it back around. Listen.
Monster. You'd be mistaken for thinking this was a right-wing populist age. But that would be ignoring Occupy Wall Street. That would be ignoring Jeremy Corbyn's for the many, not the few. That would be ignoring Bernie against the billionaires, RFK Jr. against Big Pharma, and more recently, George Galloway against his better judgment.
Now, I like that because I don't know if he's against or for George Galloway, but it's kind of funny because George Galloway, obviously, excuse me, brought the hammer down on himself by saying a lot of the stuff he said. So George Galloway saying the things he said brought the hammer down on himself. And, whether this guy likes Galloway or not, that's a valid point.
Now, all of them, including Galloway, recognize genuine concerns of ordinary people being otherwise ignored by the establishment. I'm actually rather surprised that our esteemed opposition, Congressman Pelosi, is on that side of the motion. I thought the left was supposed to be anti-elite. I thought the left was supposed to be anti-establishment. Today, particularly in America, the globalist left have become the establishment. I suppose for Ms. Pelosi to have taken this side of the motion, she'd be arguing herself out of a job.
So I'm just going to go back and show you Steve Bannon's closing statements because they match up a lot with what this guy is saying. And again, make the point that there is a very, very, I make this point every time I get on a live stream, but there's so many commonalities between the populist left and the populist right. And we're being intentionally divided. Where's this Bannon clip? See, this is the problem I always run into when I do these streams like this, because I don't have like a roadmap. Here it is. Check this out.
President Trump identified himself as a nationalist the other day, right? And the media went to a complete meltdown. Judge President Trump and this populist movement and the populist movement worldwide, judged by their actions. Hold them accountable. We're not perfect. People are trying to figure this out as they go, but I will tell you one thing. The little guy, this is about the little guy versus the elites. The little guy identifies with that, whether it's in Hungary, whether it's in Italy, whether it's in Brazil, whether it's in the United States of America. The future obviously belongs to populism. It's only going to be defined by, is it left-wing populism or conservative and right-wing populism? Is it about deconstructing the administrative state and opening up the power of capitalism? Or is it going to be about more state intervention in your entire life? Because that is going to be the future. The battle going forward in the United States is against the Bernie Sanders and the Cory Bookers and Elizabeth Warren and that aspect of the Democratic Party that grows in strength every day, the resistance. That's the reality. The rest of it's just happy talk. The other thing, don't look beyond the smears, the signal and the noise. Look at the signal. Look at the actions. Look how they're bringing people in. Look how this populist movement will reach out and take the economic nationalist and the Bernie Sanders movement. Look how we will go and accommodate and bring in a third of the African American vote in our country, something the Republican Party for decades and decades and decades talked about and never did. Look at right now, I think it's 40%, the poll today, 40% of Hispanics agree with what President Trump's doing on the border because they understand they bear the burden of the solutions of that. I'm not saying President Trump's perfect. He wouldn't say he's perfect. He's a very imperfect instrument. He might not say he's an imperfect instrument, but he's...
And that was when Bannon was fired.
I can understand David's frustration. I can understand the angst. As one of the senior public intellectuals and leaders of the Bush administration, the traditional public, the Republican Party, look at the 16
He and Victoria Nuland, of course, both worked for the Bush administration.
people that ran against President Trump.
That is the new left. The new left is guys like David Frum and women like Victoria Nuland.
2016 or the 14. They were a flower of a generation of donor money, of Heritage, of AEI, of Cato, of Paul Singer, of the Kochs, of all of it. And look at the quality of the people. Jeb Bush and Marco Rubio, Governor Christie, Ted Cruz, Rand Paul, every vertical had its best person. It was the strongest field in the history of the Republican Party. And Donald Trump cut through that like a sift through grass, right? Why? Because he talked about trade. He talked about this radical idea, a radical idea of free trade, particularly when you're going against a totalitarian, mercantilist society like China. He talked about the deindustrialization of our country. He talked about where people's lives are. He talked about what mattered. That's why he won. That's why he won the Republican primary, and that's why he beat Hillary Clinton. Our whole thing was to compare and contrast. You're the tribune of the people, and she is the guardian of a corrupt and incompetent elite, a permanent political class. Somehow I see I'm not quite connecting.
That was the moment Bannon won the crowd over. He actually ends up winning this debate. Again, I highly recommend watching it.
And it's not, and I realize David tonight tried to demonize this. It's not racist, it's not nativist, it's not xenophobic. The deplorables are the finest people. We're in the fourth turning of American history. We had the Revolution, the Civil War, Great Depression, World War II. And now the fourth turning. Every 80 to 100 years this happens because in generational history, it's the movie David was in with me. It's about how you're raised, how you raise the generation. We're in the great fourth turning. In the next 10, 15, or 20 years, the United States is going to be, we're either going to be the country we're bequeathed or going to be something totally different. And the backbone of our country, we're not an idea. America's not an idea. It's a nation. We have the greatest land and the greatest resources. We have divine.
So I'll cut there, but I want you to see, before we close this out, I want you to see Pelosi's response to this argument. I think Bannon makes it a lot more eloquently than the guy from Mumford Sons does, and I also think that the sound on that clip isn't as good as I would like it to be. But here is the Pelosi response to the populism argument. Whoop, sorry.
Democracy.
Wrong clip. Here is the Pelosi response to the populism argument. Buckle your seatbelts. God damn it. I keep choosing the wrong fucking. Maybe I didn't record it. This is why I got to plan these shows better. Here it is.
Democracy without free speech.
Okay, I'm gonna find this clip. I know oh, here it is. Okay. I'm an idiot. Here is Pelosi's response. This time for real.
Good evening. Thank you all very much for this very stimulating evening. Mr. President, congratulations to you and your officers for bringing us together to discuss this very important challenge. The proposition says that it is a threat to democracy. It didn't say it will cause it. It said it is a threat. So remember what the proposition is. Now listen attentively to our two friends here and their
So she just says populism is a threat to democracy.
description of populism and our white tie and tail gentleman and his comments. And you know what? They make a very compelling argument. It would have been so appropriate 200 years ago in the time of Andrew Jackson. It's an old notion of
I can't even hear her.
Of populism. For today, I always like to put down temporal markers. For today, how populism weighs in is in a way that is different. Voltaire said, if you want to debate with me, define your terms. Well, let's define what is happening with populism today.
Okay, so she's like, oh, you're going to have a debate. You're going to define your terms. I will crank the volume up on this clip when I do post-production.
Populism is sprung on some of the people that have been named here, put forth with an ethno-nationalist populism.
So you heard both Homeboy and Bannon explain how this is a demonization tactic that they use against populism, against right-wing populism. Oh, they're all racists. They did that to Ron Paul back in the day.
In our
He's a
country,
racist.
we see nationalism, isolationism. We had a fight to get the bill that we got last week, and generated by an ethnic negativity about the incumbent of immigrants, young incumbents.
It's
immigrants,
racism.
people who are different from them, these people, and the rest. Our problem with, I don't think mob rule is a definition of democracy. What is democracy? Let's define democracy. Democracy is the rule of law. Democracy is free and fair elections.
Democracy is the rule of law. Let's define democracy. I'm curious now. What does Google say? Google says democracy is a system of government by the whole population or all the eligible members of a state, typically through elected representatives. So it is not the rule of law.
Elections. Democracy is about the independent judiciary. It's about freedom of the press, to have transparency and to have accountability of elected officials to the people. It's about...
Which we don't have.
And a resistance to passing the Voting Rights Act, the John Lewis Act, all of that, because they want to contain who votes. Now, the issue of independent judiciary. We owe so much to the UK, or England as it was, when it put forth so much.
I just gotta say, whoever did the stage work for this event is fucking terrible. Like, you can't even hear either one of them talking. Someone should have put lapel mics on them. Jesus Christ.
Many things at Runnymede, England. And one of them was trial by jury. When King John came, the barons who were there they had 12 chairs. And
at least when you post the video, Oxford guys, bump the sound up. Jesus Christ, you guys are terrible.
From that was a joy of your peers, 12 peers. And that sprang from the Magna Carta. And
so Pelosi just sounds like a rambling drunk, uttering out, rattling off buzzwords like democracy, rule of law, freedom of press. What did she just say?
Thing that we hold dear in our country. Right now,
judiciary.
We see trial by jury threatened by vicious assaults on the jurors.
I have no idea what she's talking
When
about
we
here.
talk about populism and we talk about democracy, let's understand our terms today, not 200 years ago, but today. And
since we've redefined them,
are humored by some of the Ted Cruz and people like that. That may be humorous to you, but it ain't funny to us because it has a direct impact on what's happening. Now, here's the thing that is so sad about all of that. That's really hard to deny. I was eager to hear their argument.
Jump to the end.
But what I heard could have been made 200 years ago and not facing the realities that we see. So I urge you all to vote in favor of the proposition. And again, with respect for the...
So her argument, just to sum there, because it was long-winded and very poorly recorded, is that populism, as Steve Bannon and Winston from Mumford Sons define it, is not right, because that was how it was defined 200 years ago, and we've now changed what these words mean because it politically benefits us to do that. That's essentially what her argument was.
Presentations that we had, and really, Sultan, I was ready to vote for you for one of those positions. I really was. But I'm not sure now, because I don't know that you could possibly believe the presentation. I know this is academic.
So did you hear what she said? She said, I'm actually pretty close to a lot of those positions, but I'm not sure now because you can't believe the presentation.
Maybe you believe it. I respect that. But what I do respect is our democracy. And just tell you one more thing. I'm from Baltimore, Maryland, where our national anthem was written by Francis Scott Key. And he wrote a beautiful thing in the national anthem, and it's our motivation right now in some of our campaigning. He said, proof through the night that our flag was still there. Proof through the night that our flag was still there. We have to prove through the night of this election that our flag is still there. A flag that we pledge to every civic day with liberty and justice for all. And that is supporting democracy, supporting our flag and all it stands for, and it is threatened by this version of populism that exists today.
So she mentions at the end of that too, I just have to do this. At the end of that, she mentions that she's from Baltimore, where Francis Scott Key, the guy who wrote the national anthem, is from. Well, I had to hurry and dig up this article real quick about the Star Spangled Banner's racist origins. So here's the title of the Washington Post article: "The ugly reason the Star Spangled Banner didn't become our national anthem for a century." Let's read a little bit of this. It was September 18. I don't want to read the whole thing. British had also taken prisoners and the mission. But while on the ship, the man, 35-year-old lawyer named Francis Scott Key, overheard plans for a surprise attack on Baltimore. He and the doctor would not be allowed to leave until the attack was over. That's how Key ended up witnessing the bombardment of Fort McHenry while aboard a British ship. He couldn't tell from his vantage point who had won or lost, but at dawn, he saw the American flag, 15 stars and 15 stripes at the time, still waving over the fort, and was inspired to write a poem. Soon, it was set to the tune of an existing song. But that's the short version of how the Star Spangled Banner came to be. The longer version of both the song and the story of the man who wrote it reveals not only why it has become controversial now in this season of racial reckoning, football, and presidential campaigning. This was during the Kaepernick thing is when this came out. But why it was so too controversial to become the national anthem for more than a century after it was written. First, a few things to know about the War of 1812, the main reasons for the British practice of forced conscription of American sailors to fight for the Royal Navy, plus the British promised refuge to any enslaved black people who escaped their enslavers, raising fears among white Americans of a large-scale revolt. The final provocation was that men who escaped their bonds of slavery were welcome to join the British Corps of the Colonial Marines in exchange for land after their service. As many as 4,000 people, mostly from Virginia and Maryland, escaped. It's important to know that these things, because the Star Spangled Banner, originally called the Defense of Fort McHenry, has more than one verse. The second half of the third verse ends like this: "No refuge could save the hireling and slave from the terror of flight or the gloom of the grave, and the Star Spangled Banner in triumph doth wave over the land of the free and the home of the brave." No refuge could save the hireling and slave. So these lyrics are a clear reference to the Colonial Marines, according to Jefferson Morley, author of Snowstorm in August, Washington City, Francis Scott Key, and the Forgotten Race Riot of 1835. They are clearly meant to scorn and threaten the African Americans who took the British up on their offer, he wrote in a recent essay. The Washington Post, Key surely knew about the Colonial Marines, and it's even possible he saw them come among the contingent of British ships that sailed into the Baltimore harbor. So there you go. Nancy Pelosi's cites some racist, cites Francis Scott Key as her, bulwark against populism, I guess. Interesting. All right. Well, I would like to close out by just playing you something stupid, which I usually do. But thanks for paying attention as usual. I'm going to be doing this a lot more. I know I say that a lot, but my time is becoming a little bit more flexible. So I want to get better. I'm doing it by myself too. I wish I had someone to help me with production. Maybe eventually I will, but in the short term, it's a one-man gig. So, you know that, I know that coming into it, I don't, pretend to be perfect. Every once in a while, I lose a clip or forget something, but I appreciate you for bearing with me. And hopefully I'm bringing some shit up that you maybe missed in the constant hurricane of news bullshit that's coming out constantly. So I had a couple other things to talk about, but I've been on for a long time already, almost 3 hours. So let's close out with a couple of just real quick clips. I like to end on funny shit, so I'm going to play my Blinken Rockin' in the Free World one more time. Bombing the free world. Keep on bombing lots of people. And then pivot into one more little stupid little song that I thought was fucking pretty funny. And I'll see you out there. Hit me up on Twitter, and we'll be back soon. Take good care of yourselves, and keep on bombing lots of people.
Keep on bombing lots of people. Keep on bombing lots of people. Keep on bombing lots of people. Bombing lots of people.
What is coming up?